Good evening.
Hard for them to.
Welcome. Call to order the April 4, 2018 meeting of the Falmouth Conservation Commission. Before we get going, I'd just like to ask everyone in the room to please silence your devices and also just make the general comment that everyone is welcome to address the board when the appropriate time comes, but we need you to come up to the podium and speak into the microphone. Okay, first item of business is to vote on the minutes of March 28th.
Madam Chair, I read them, but I forgot them, so I can't submit them.
So I take it you have corrections?
Yes, I did.
Okay.
So can we table them till the,
18th?
unless anybody else already did them?
Does anybody else have a motion to make?
It was so minuscule. I think it was one word.
Oh. Well,
Yeah.
Lori, just drop them
On
off.
page 5, okay.
all right. So,
So motion to accept as
Second.
amended.
all right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, unanimous, so moved. Next, request for continuance under determination of applicability. Anthony and Judith DeCoteau, 3 Maker Lane, West Falmouth, for permission to pump, fill, and remove septic system and replace with a new Title V sewage disposal system.
Yes, Madam Chairman, the applicant is requesting a continuance until the 18th.
So moved.
Second.
April 18th?
Yes.
Okay,
What's
all
the
those in
reason?
favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, unanimous, so moved. Request for a continuance under a notice of intent. Kevin Skelly, 258 Edgewater Drive East, East Falmouth, Massachusetts, for permission to repair 78 linear feet of storm-damaged stone riprap along seawall.
Yes, Madam Chairman, the applicant is requesting a continuance until May 2nd.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, unanimous, so moved. George Willis, 16 Gosnold Road, Woods Hole, for permission to repair approximately 70 linear feet of storm-damaged stone riprap along seawall.
Requesting a continuance until April 18th.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, unanimous, so moved. Okay, now we move to tonight's request for determination of applicability. And just so everyone here understands, for this kind of an application, what the applicant wants to hear is a negative determination, because that means, no, you don't need to submit the next level of application. The one you have submitted is adequate. J. and Leah DeCoteau, 507 Central Avenue, East Falmouth, for permission to build a cantilever addition over existing patio, enclose existing deck above garage, and install a dry well.
Yes, Madam Chairman, we are recommending a -2 under the state and the bylaw with the resource area boundaries not confirmed.
So moved.
Second.
Any questions or comments from the board, from the public? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, unanimous, so moved. Deborah Rogers, 310 Dillingham Avenue, map 39-21-006A-000A, Falmouth, Massachusetts, for permission to connect the existing commercial building to the town sewer system.
Yes, Madam Chairman, we are recommending a -2 under the bylaw and -3 under the state with the resource area boundaries not confirmed.
So moved.
Second.
Any questions or comments?
I have one.
Yes.
They're going to use the existing SAS for stormwater drainage. I don't think the Board of Health allows that. I would just maybe double check. I mean, they might have had it okayed, but it's not legal to do that. You have to pump, fill, and abandon and all.
It says on the plan, existing septic tank to be pumped, crushed, and filled with clean sand repaved to existing grade.
Yeah, that's the tank, but then they're gonna use, it sounds like they're using,
Existing grease trap. Oh, there we go. Thank you, Tom.
okay.
The record is Tom Bunker. Yeah, Maury, we have that labeled if they actually knew the Norwegian Scott. If he says we can't do it, we can't.
Okay.
We have done it in the past, but,
Okay,
and, you know, I expect it to be dry. I mean, I don't think there's anything in a pump, but
Okay.
if for any reason he thinks it's a health hazard, we'll just then continue filling it and abandoning it.
okay, thank you.
All right,
Thank you,
anything
Tom.
else from the board? Anything from the public? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, unanimous, so moved. Treetops Condominium, 120 Woods Hole Road, Ship's Watch, Buildings 6 and 7, Falmouth, Massachusetts, for permission to install dry wells and connect to existing building downspouts.
Yes, we're recommending a -2 under the state and the bylaw with the resource area boundaries not confirmed.
So move.
Second.
Any questions or comments from the board? Anything from the public? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous, so moved. Patricia Garland, 114 Quaker Road, West Falmouth, for permission to remove existing leaching pit and replace with Title V sewage disposal system.
Yes, Madam Chairman, we are recommending a -2 under the state and the bylaw with the resource area boundaries not confirmed.
So move.
Second.
Any questions or comments from the board? Anything from the public? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous, so moved. Steamship Authority, 1 Railroad Avenue, Woods Hole, Massachusetts, for permission to drive 3 new piles to replace 3 broken piles.
Yes, Madam Chairman.
It's in the back.
Oh, okay. Oh, there he is. I'm like, I could have sworn I saw him. We are recommending a -2 under the state and the bylaw with the resource area boundaries not confirmed.
So move.
Second.
You're all set.
Thank you.
I looked up and I thought you were sitting there and I didn't see you. I'm like, where did he go?
Anything from the board? Okay, anything from the public? Or just do a quit while you're ahead? All right. All those in
Run.
favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous, so moved.
Madam Chairman, just a correction on this. I think it was supposed to be continued requests.
Yes, right.
Your
I looked
determination.
at that earlier today, and I was like, what are we doing? Okay. Yes, next section is continued requests under a determination of applicability. Delaware North, Paul Pokigo, 350 Quaker Avenue, North Falmouth, for permission to convert an 1,150 square foot 3-season porch to a fully enclosed, insulated, and heated porch, including permanent roof structure within the existing footprint.
Yes, Madam Chairman, we are recommending a -2 under the state and the bylaw with the resource area boundaries
So
not
moved.
confirmed.
Second.
Okay, anything from the board?
Questions?
Yes.
Is this thing, does this move the permanent part of the building closer to the resource?
No,
Thank you.
it does not. I do have one question. You had spoken with my staff regarding the structural integrity of the existing footings. Is it on footings or?
It's basically on pilings, and because it's in a velocity zone, we can't have any member below those existing structural members, which it's been designed to not do that. And we have received
Okay.
a building permit with the building commissioner.
Okay, excellent, thank you. Oh, you need to give your name for the record.
Griffin Ryder with VHB, my apologies.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, anything else from the board? Anything from the public? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, unanimous, and so moved. Eversource Energy, care of Matthew Waldrop, 45 Little Neck Bars Road, West Falmouth, for permission to install 1,200 linear feet of underground electrical conduit, which includes 3 pull boxes within Little Neck Bars Road from the corner of Chappaquoit Road South to 45 Little Neck Bars Road.
Yes, Madam Chairman, we are recommending a -2 under the state and the bylaw with the resource area boundaries not confirmed.
So moved.
Second.
Anything from the board?
I have one question.
Yes, Maureen.
Jen, do you know if they had discussion that they would do this with a mole instead of digging a trench? Since that road is the one that was completely redone?
Oh,
Hi,
here's
for
the
the
mole
rec-
lady.
For the record, I'm Dana Vesti with Ty and Bond. I'm here on the behalf of Eversource Energy. So I believe they're planning on using conventional construction equipment to do this.
That's what they just said. So what I'm asking you is why are they using conventional when there's an alternative that's less invasive? Because this is a pretty fragile area, and this road has a notice of intent that took quite a while to get, to do all the grading, and I don't know, are they gonna be,
I did have
as-
a conversation, I had discussed it with your new agent Brendan
Yeah.
late today. He was unaware of that fact, so when we were going over these,
Yeah.
I did let him know that there were vegetated swales that were along that side where Eversource is going to trench, and then when the road's regraded, it does need to be pitched to make sure that the runoff goes into the swales.
okay,
And
because
that
I'm
the swales are
concerned.
not damaged.
Right, because, you know, Eversource isn't in the business of engineering, you know, pitches and swales and maintenance of pitches and swales. And this, I'm just concerned, the length of this, you know, 3,500 lineal feet. And I really think that they should, I mean, we've made them do it before, mowing, and I know you do it. Am I correct?
Yes.
That would be a yes, we do know that. Okay.
It's 1,200 linear feet, I think.
They can still do
It's-
it and longer.
Well, it says
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm just-
3,555 square feet, you're right,
Square feet
sorry.
versus linear feet.
I don't know how many lineal feet, but it's quite a ways, from 45 to the end of Chappaquay. I would like to table this or have them continue this in,
That's what I was just gonna suggest. Would you considering, continuing this until April 18th, which is our next hearing, so that you can consult with Eversource to see if they could mow it at the request of the commission?
I can see if they'll do mowing instead of conventional
Okay.
equipment.
Okay, thank you.
Excuse me, would you happen to know the diameter of the pipe that they're proposing?
It's usually a 1-inch pipe.
It's a 1-inch pipe? Oh, wow.
well, that's why I'm wondering, with a 1-inch pipe, that you're gonna have a 3-foot trench. When you,
It's more when you excavate the width of an excavator, so you dig down, and so it's enough width so that you can grade the bottom of the trench, and then you backfill.
okay, well, you might wanna look at 28A, where they just put in a gas line that's down almost 3 feet, and they only excavated a hole 12 inches wide. So that's why we're concerned. There, it is a possibility.
If they ask around, and I'm pretty sure it wouldn't be, take too much investigation, they could find, if not molding, certainly a less invasive
small
way
bucket.
of installing that pipe.
So 1 inch.
Okay. They do try to do best management practices.
Pardon?
They do best management practices in order to,
I'm sure they
Return
do,
everything.
but
We,
okay.
we feel there's a better one.
like
I
better
think
ones.
just, you know, if you could consult with Eversource and let them know that the commission is concerned
quite
because
that.
that area is fairly sensitive, and if they have any, they could use a less invasive method of installing that, at least along the roadway, that would be, you
Okay.
know, better for the commission. So continuance until April 18th?
Yeah, one moment, we need
Okay.
to have the
Issue.
previous motions withdrawn. What
I
motion?
made the I don't know, one of us did.
Yeah.
I'll
Yeah.
withdraw my motion.
I'll withdraw the second,
Okay, can we
or
have
vice versa.
an alternative motion, please?
I make a motion to continue this to April 18th.
Second.
All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, unanimous, so moved.
If you have any questions tomorrow, just call the office and ask to speak to Jennifer.
Okay,
Okay.
sounds great.
It's a 1-inch conduit. Is this a primary service?
Saconesset Hills Association, care of John Fetterchuck, Saconesset Road and 146 Saconesset Road, West Falmouth. Permission to improve drainage, which includes the installation of a second leaching pit.
Yes, Madam Chairman, we're recommending a -2 under the bylaw and -3 under the state with the resource area boundaries not confirmed.
So move.
Second.
Do we have any questions or comments from the board? Anything from the public? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
And I'm abstaining,
Okay, well, you're recusing.
recusing.
All right, so, it looks to me like we have 6 yays and 1 recusal. Sean and Rebecca Dougherty, 15 Stratford Road, Falmouth, Massachusetts, for permission to remove existing deck and stairs, construct a new sunroom, including bluestone landing and stairs, and to install stairs and landing to second-story deck.
Yes, Madam Chairman, we are recommending a -2 under the state and the bylaw with the resource area boundaries not confirmed.
So move.
Second.
Any questions or comments from the board? Anything from the public? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, unanimous, so moved. And then this 3-Maker Lane has already been continued until April 18th. So now we come to requests for hearings under a notice of intent. All hearings of the Falmouth Conservation Commission are held simultaneously under the authorities of the Massachusetts Wetlands Protection Act and the Falmouth Wetlands Bylaw. Although a single decision of the commission is issued, it represents a separate decision under each authority. So first up here is Skelly 258 Edgewater Drive, which has been continued to May 2nd. Which takes us to Michael McGordy, Cypress Street, from 6 to 8 Cypress Street, East Falmouth, Massachusetts, for permission to pave a 260-foot section of the existing gravel roadway and install a storm water management system. Good evening.
Courtney?
Thank you. Excuse me. Thank you, Madam Chair. For the record, my name is Bob Rogers with GAF Engineering, representing the McGurdy's.
Thank you, welcome.
So, very briefly, this project involves the paving of a 20-foot wide existing gravel road for 260 feet. Cypress Street, this is the west side of Cypress Street from Mara Vista, and so the planning board had approved a subdivision which allowed the paving of Cypress Street up to, or down to, I should say, 18 Cypress Street. So the McGurdy's are proposing to continue the pavement for 260 feet down to number 6 Cypress Street. So we have provided a design which cross-pitches the road to a drainage swale on the south side of the street. We've put check dams in the drainage swale, and then the runoff enters a deep sump-hooded catch basin, and then we have 6 infiltration chambers. Historically, there's been a lot of filling of potholes on this road, so the paving of the majority of the road is going to prevent all of that sand and gravel from heading toward the resource area. And we've included a stormwater management report with the notice of intent. And so it's a redevelopment project which is improving stormwater runoff. And so we're providing full compliance with the water quality requirements and the infiltration requirements. And so I believe just recently the base course for pavement for the other project has been completed. So there's base course of pavement up to number 18. And so we would like to coordinate this so that when the top course is ready, that our pavement could be done at the same time as the Sandlands pavement.
Do you know when that's going to be?
It's somewhat weather dependent. I think they were trying to do it in April, but we can't do anything until we receive an order of conditions and get through the appeal period. So late April, May just as soon as we could get it coordinated.
You're looking at late April, early May.
Yes.
Yep. Okay. That's fine.
Do you have anything else, Jen?
No.
Courtney?
No questions.
No questions.
Kevin?
I'm a little nervous about it, but I'll say no questions. You walk down there and putting this carries quite a swath through what's there, and it's still going to be down at the bottom. And that system you're proposing will have to be maintained by somebody.
Correct. It would be maintained by the applicant, the owners. It's a private street, so it would be maintained by the McGurty family.
And that's in a covenant somewhere?
Well, I'm assuming it's going to be a requirement of the order of conditions.
Very good.
Yes.
All right, thank you. James?
No questions? No questions.
Okay, is this, so this, will be inspected by DPW before we issue an order, Jen? Is that,
The site? No.
no?
No.
Okay.
It's private road.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I'll make a motion and we'll close the hearing and take it under advisement.
Second.
Okay, any other questions or comments?
One more question.
Sure.
Is this going to be completed by the same contractor?
I think that's the plan, to,
And if you would clarify once again where it stops presently and where you're proposing to end?
Sure. If you look at the plan in front of house number 18, there's a light line. That's the, where our pavement starts is where their pavement stops presently.
You're going to start it in the middle of 18 and down in the middle of 6?
Yes.
Thank you.
So that gets us to a flat spot. So, most of the drainage is going to go right into that catch basin, but anything that bypasses it, that's a flat area. It's going to remain gravel and lawn. It's kind of a, it's a, what am I trying to say? It's a turnaround, kind of a unofficial cul-de-sac, if you want to call it that.
All set, okay. Anything from the public? Yes, come up, Tom.
Thank you. I'm Tom Bunker, BSS Design. I represent the Sandlin family on the south side of this road. Some are here now. They're the ones doing the paving on the upper end of the road. We went through a subdivision plan several years ago, and there was a court case that grew out of it, and one of the points that came out of this, it was agreed that the Sandlins would build the upper part, and the McGurtys would build the lower parts. We have no problem. It's a good compromise and decision. But there is one point here, and I have a memo coming out of the court said that before submitting this plan to the Conservation Commission, the plaintiffs, that is the McGurtys, shall provide a copy of the plans to the Sandlins for their review and approval. This wasn't done. There are a few points that we would like to make. I can give you a copy of this here.
I was unaware of that, Tom.
Excuse me?
We were unaware of that.
Right.
Yeah. Oh, I understand. I think that, the engineer might be unaware of it also, just fell through the cracks. But we, would have liked to review the plans, and there is one issue. There's been continuing parking on the south side of the road, and that is on the Sandlin side of the road. And we have some pictures here to show, and we're concerned that will continue, and that parking is where this swale will be. And so we would actually like to see some changes made to the plan which would prevent parking and driving, crossing over the swale, which we feel would enhance its effectiveness at the water quality treatment, if it's done often enough or long enough. I have these pictures and this court document to show you here. As I said, we have, we welcome the paving of it, but there's one main point. There are a couple other changes that we'd like on the plan. That is, JF didn't have our most recent plan when they were drawing this, so misrepresented some of how how the Sandlands were building the upper part of it. But I think the main idea is that we'd like that swale protected from parking, so we'd actually like the hearing continued so that we could review the plans and work with GIF just to get one or two safeguards put in before continuing this.
Can I see that court document?
Yes. Did you want to say anything else at the moment, John?
No, that's basically it.
Mr. Rogers, do you want to just respond to that request one way or the other?
Excuse me. There's just a concern that maybe we wouldn't be able to come to an agreement. We're certainly willing and able to make a correction on the plan where we're showing the turnaround that was revised off their project. So we're certainly willing to make that correction. This swale is only 3 feet wide and 6 inches deep. And so there will be an ability, certainly, for cars to just pull off the road a little bit. Any more than that, you risk, bottoming out the front of your car. But, there's also some things that they would like us to add to the plan that are part of their project. And so we think that they should, if there are driveway locations that they want shown, if they're in a jurisdictional area, we feel that should be part of their notice of intent for their home construction. This project, if and when you approve it, and again, I stated the environmental benefits, they're going to have to construct it in accordance with the plan, and they're going to have to ask for a certificate of compliance because there are a number of, it's not just the McGurdy's, but the Sandlands, they own to the center of the road, and so the order of conditions is going to get recorded against all of those deeds. So we think there's sufficient legal structure that would require the McGurdy's to construct and maintain it in accordance with the permit. We're concerned of the delay, but I'm certainly willing to submit a corrected plan for that one paved turnout.
Were you aware of this, sir?
I was made aware of it Monday night by my client, and he was very apologetic in terms of the submission of the plan to the Sandlands. I only really got involved with Tom and Mr. Ament, today, several phone calls.
Okay.
So,
Can I suggest something?
Tell your client they probably should have made us aware of this, because I'm less likely to have this board close this hearing without, anytime there's something like that in
Sure.
a hearing that we're involved with, I would like the town's attorneys to do that as
Sure.
well.
Well,
I mean,
no.
I understand it's an agreement between two private properties, but it does implicate this board.
Is it going to be right?
And for that to be withheld from this board is,
Well, it wasn't withheld. I knew Tom was going to be here tonight. I knew he was going to be.
it was withheld when the application was filed, so we weren't aware that this, this issue was gonna come up at our hearing.
Right, correct. And-
If I had known about that, I would have made sure that this plan was, that you were required to submit it to the other party and give them the opportunity to,
Yes, I'm
instead
the
of
same.
having this issue come up at our hearing.
Yes, of course. And so if I had the prior knowledge, I certainly would have acted in accordance with what you're saying now.
Well, you could have requested a continuance yesterday.
Today was when I had the discussions
Okay.
with Tom and Mr. Smith.
Okay.
You could have done it today also.
I understand your client's desire to have, to be able to get the road paved in early May. If we were to continue this, I'm looking at a May 2nd continuance.
May 2nd.
Yeah, that's the best we can do. A May 2nd continuance date with a May 23rd order of conditions, vote that on the 23rd. That's the best I can do, finding out about that tonight.
So what's your
Just-
choice?
Well, is there any other information or concerns of the commission? You know, again, certainly my expectation was everyone would have an opportunity to speak before closing the public hearing.
I'm concerned about the parking on the drainage swell that Tom brought up. That would be a concern of ours. I mean, the drainage swell, you have that on the south side, correct?
Yes,
And that's the opposing party's side of the,
correct. It's
the road?
They did the same thing on their subdivision plans. They cross-pitched the road to the south from Mara Vista all the way to number 18. So, and that's the natural grade of the land for the most part of the road, so.
but that area is outside of our jurisdiction. So I'm only concerned with the area in our jurisdiction. It's up to you, Madam Chairman.
It's up to him,
Yep.
I would say. Courtney?
I'll withdraw my motion to close.
Okay, thank you.
And I'll withdraw my second.
Thank you. Okay, so we're back to square one. We can close, or you can ask for continuance.
Sure. Well,
Excuse me. Yes, we should hear from everybody who wants to speak before you decide. Okay, thanks.
How are you? Good evening. My name is Michael McGurty. I am the applicant. Things just happen so quickly. It's been sitting around for a long period of time. I haven't been involved. I don't live here during the winter, and I've been away. And the engineering came in so quickly and got passed through. It was an oversight on my part. We did get the plans out. They went out about a week and a half ago with all the, I've had them now delivered to me.
March 21st.
Okay, so everyone's had the plans for a period of time.
I understand that,
know I
but we
made a
have
mistake.
new information
Sure,
this
sure.
evening, and
Absolutely, and I want to address, with regards to Cypress Street, my family has lived on the street for over 50 years. We built those properties all the way down to Cypress Street. We actually pulled the roadway to end further up in front of 6 Cypress Street to leave that additional drainage field there, the natural grade and the natural sand and so forth. We would have liked to have brought the roadway further down, but then you would get close to the estuary and then Little Pond, and by pulling it back and with the design of the, from GAF Engineering, it just made it a better practice, and it made it better for the community and the neighborhood. And that's the reason it was designed that way. The parking issue has been something that has been ongoing. It's a roadway, we've lived there, we've parked on both sides of the street. It hasn't been until this new development started that this became, the linchpin on the street. And everyone on the street has always had and exercised their right to use that way for which ways are used by parking. And sometimes it's convenient to park on the other side, and when no one lives on the other side of the roadway, it's not an issue. And, obviously, someone develops and builds a home, you're not going to be parking in their front lawn. but as it's just a wooded area now, you know, to be pointing out the fact that someone's parking on the other side of a street in front of their home where there's no development, and that becomes an issue, it's really not an issue. I mean, obviously, when the lots are developed and a home is built, you will respect your neighbor's rights, and you wouldn't obviously be parking in their front lawn or in front of their home. So the parking issue is really not an issue. It's being made an issue, but it's really not one. There's no intent to upset anybody. Basically, if you've gone down Cypress Street where the road ends now, it's even worse because it's got the base coat is now on it. Where the base coat ends, the road makes that pitch downward. So all the water now is running down the road, even worse than it was before, because the drainage that is associated with the upper portion of the roadway hasn't been completed. So, I mean, now if you go down, you can see where all the road is really washing down even harder now than it was before, because they haven't got to that stage of setting their drainage in at the top, but it's made it worse for us at the bottom as we live there now. And we understand that going forward, we'll be able to correct that when we complete the road at our expense. There's no expense to the Sandlands who live across the street. This is no bargain for us. We didn't ask to come before any board, spend the kind of money we're spending to betterment the road. We've lived there for 50 years or more. My family members, they live at, they own 2 Cypress Street, 6. I live at 10. I have a brother at 14, one at 16, one at 18, one at 20, 26, 36, 38. We didn't ask to have this additional cost. I think everybody in this town
Nobody
is
asked
getting
to have
costs.
additional costs.
We got the
Come
storage,
before this
we got the
board.
sewer hookup and everything else on top of this, and then you're looking at, $30,000, $40,000 to complete a roadway that we hadn't anticipated. So we're just trying to do the best we can. And this drainage that's going to be put in will be better drainage than probably 95% or more of the roads that go all the way up to Mara Vista and many that go back. I've walked all those roads. They're not going to have anywhere the type of drainage that we have. We're going to catch anything that may run down to Little Pond. You go down to Montauk Street, and the road ends, and it just right down into the woods and right into the water. That's all. I mean, there's no intent to try to get anything by the board.
I
That's all.
had not presumed that there was, but
Okay.
nonetheless, we're presented
I
now with
understand.
a legal wrinkle
Okay.
that complicates our deliberations. We normally, get an opinion from town council on this kind of
Okay.
thing before we make a decision. So it's not necessarily prejudicial to your case, but it means either you continue or you don't.
Well,
It's your decision, Mike. I mean, to me, I think a few weeks to try and work things out.
then I guess we'll ask for a continuance, but some of the items that they've asked for are totally unacceptable. Putting an additional guardrail before the runoff is something that is not acceptable. We're certainly not going to pay for it. We wouldn't want something like that on a roadway easement. Some of the things they've asked for are just,
Sir,
it's just.
You just need to work that out. We're not gonna require, we're
That's
gonna
all I'm just
require
saying.
that
That's
drainage
fine.
swell
If
to
it's all-
be protected.
I just want to let the board know, we wouldn't want that, and I don't think anyone else would want that in their road. But-
I mean, I
okay, we'll-
have
we would ask-
concerns with the location of the drainage swale, given if these lots are gonna be developed. I mean, is there gonna be a house right where that drainage swale is, and then they want to, that's how they're gonna access?
I'm told that there's going to be 2 driveways, single-family home driveways, and that they'd be located close to their drainage system, most likely in a
up there.
non-jurisdictional area.
I love non-jurisdictional areas.
I mean, there's a decent amount of room where we don't have
Yep.
a swale, but, wherever their driveway needs needs to be. All it needs is a 12-inch pipe and a little bit of fill to, and so again, we feel either that's something that they don't need to file for, or that it should be part of their filing, not depicted on our plan.
I mean, you have two choices, gentlemen. You can continue the hearing and try to work things out, or, you know, close your hearing and risk an appeal. I mean, that's, I mean, I would just try to work it out for a few weeks. Unfortunately, just given our schedule, if I could get you on an earlier date, I absolutely would. But the board does not meet next week because of the, this municipality's town meeting. And the other dates are really busy, so.
Jen, excuse
Yes.
me, am I correct in assuming that once the hearing is closed, we can't take
We cannot
advice
take
from
any-
town council anyway? Is that correct?
No.
Okay.
Yeah, once before.
Right.
Right.
Yes, sir. Yes, you certainly may.
Hi, my name's Trent Salen. I'm one of the trustees of the other side of the road, the Salen Family Trust property. We went to litigation for a year in land court about the whole, we tried to subdivide our part of the property. And we came to a settlement with the other side regarding how the road would be done. We agreed to do the upper 572 feet, I think it was, and the McGurty family and several of their other neighbors who were part of the litigation said that they would be the ones paving the other part coming before conservation. So it's not like they didn't want to do it, they were the ones that recommended it during the litigation period. The concern with parking, it's been ongoing, it's a private road, you're only allowed access for passage, not for parking on a private road. So it's been tough. We put up no dumping signs that have pellet holes all in them. We're trying to be good neighbors, but we're being harassed and hassled. And we just, what they want to do, we really would like to see them be able to do it. We just wish that they'd come to us like the litigation said they had to, and they would be passed tonight if they had done that, because we would have settled all our issues. I mean, we're not looking for sidewalks and everything like they tried to get us to do. We just want to make sure that it's done properly and that there's no things that are overlooked that will be regretful later on. And that's why we wanted to have our option to look at their plans and just say, this is what we'd like and how can we work this out? But we were never given that choice.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
I have one quick question, Madam Chairman, on the plan.
Uh-huh.
Sir? By wetland flags 4, 5, 4, and 3, there's a little square there.
Yeah, the rectangle, there's a treehouse. in
I
that
believe my
location.
agent had a discussion with some property owners regarding that treehouse.
Yeah, sure, and I also had a meeting with Mark. It probably was maybe a couple months ago. So that's correct.
And what was the upshot then?
It needs to come down. And it's
I mean,
still there.
it's a wooden tree house that's sitting in the tree. It's been there for quite a while, but it's not even bolted or nailed to the tree. There's no, I mean, you could call it a wildlife viewing stand if you wanted, but, we did tell Mark that we would come back with a notice of intent for some enhancement near the river there. So that's still our intent, that in this area where they had done some poison ivy and invasives removal and bittersweet removal.
Without a permit, near a wetland.
So we would be coming in with that. That's separate from this project. It's really, it's not even the McGurty's property, actually, but
Were the McGurty's the ones that did the work?
I'm not sure. But, so in the spirit of cooperation moving forward.
Since they live in 80% of the houses along there, Mr. McGurty, would you like to answer that question? did one of your brothers or relatives build it?
I'm not sure.
Okay.
But I don't see the harm in a, you know. Anyway, so Mr. McGurty has told me to agree, we'll agree to one continuance. Unfortunately, we can't get the 18th, then we'll have to get
Oh,
your
God, no.
first meeting in May, so, you know,
Like I said, sir, if I could get you on the 18th or the 25th, I would, but we're going to be here until all hours of the evening
Yeah, we
anyway,
have lots
so.
of things continue to those dates.
So, May 2nd is the earliest I could possibly do it.
then that's what we'll have.
Thank you.
At
All
the
right.
request of the applicant, we'll continue this to May 2nd.
All right, anything else from the board? Anything else from the public? Yes, ma'am, come up.
Hi, my name is Mary Torrance, Almond. The McGurtys built the treehouse, and it was built recently. That hasn't been there a long time. This is September 2016.
We seem to be using it as a.
And it wasn't just poison ivy that was cut. There was lots of limbs cut, big tree limbs. Lots of dumping, clearing of the wetlands. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Anything else? Martin?
Yeah, I think we're getting off the subject. I care about the treehouse and whatever happens down there, but that has nothing to do with, to my mind, with this permit.
No, it's a separate matter. Nick.
Totally separate issue. We don't need to hear about it. We're certainly not going to judge anything about it right now. We're concerned about the road, the paving, possibly the swale, anything about guardrails by a private agreement litigated between the various owners. That's not our problem. We'll issue an order of conditions, and if for some reason you have to come in for a change because your legal issue forces you to change the plan, then you have to come back. But we could pass on this one without dealing with those, I think.
Mark, my concern is that the staff was not made aware of any sort of legal agreement, and I just want to run it by council.
Mm-hmm.
That's all.
Right.
All right, all those in favor of the continuance to May 2nd, say aye, please.
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous, so moved. Thank you.
I don't like when things are kept.
All right, George Willis, 16 Gosnell Road. This has been continued to April 18th.
I do need them if you would like.
So now,
Copies? Okay.
oh, yeah, okay, yeah. Hello. Wait a few seconds for the changing of the guard here.
That goes in the file.
Yes.
Yeah, I was continued to the 18th. There's a particular reason why I allowed that one continued to the 18th.
Right.
Stay tuned.
It's actually targeting their neighbors.
That's like the parking garage.
Parking is
Yeah, could I share your drawings if that
Hmm?
comes up?
Not in their
Say
property.
that parking is
Goes
excessive.
to the property.
Think about it.
Okay,
I'll talk to you after.
Do I have to mark every one of these?
Yeah, I've seen that. Is this the new?
You know what? We're gonna make copies of those because he wants those back. So we're gonna make copies of them tomorrow and we'll label them tomorrow. That we received them at the hearing.
yeah. Actually, is it, well, I guess it's not necessary. I was going to ask if they could be scanned and emailed to us, but.
Yeah, we can do that. I just wanna make copies. They would like them back, so I'm just gonna have Courtney make
Right.
copies
Or
of them for the
maybe-
file and then have them scanned into the system and we'll send them all to you.
Okay, thank you. Or maybe Tom already has them electronic.
Yeah, Tom will come and collect them tomorrow. I'll let
Okay.
Courtney know. Oh, shoot.
All right, sorry for the delay. Continued request for hearing under a notice of intent. Helmus Circle LLC, care of Randall Lilly, Worcester Court and Alma Road. Map 39-16001A, lots 003, 004, 005, 006, 007, 009, and 010, Helmus Circle. Private right-of-way and Helmus Circle, Lot 16, Falmouth, Massachusetts. for permission to construct a 40B development of 28 three-bedroom homes, along with associated sidewalks, driveways, and the associated clearing, excavating, grading, and landscaping.
For the record, I'm not on forum.
Okay, could we have the quorum, Susan, do you have it? Apparently Jamie's not, he's got it right here, okay. So it's
Mark.
everyone but Jamie?
Everyone but Jamie.
All right, thank you.
Everyone present but Jamie.
Everyone present but Jamie. Which makes it now everyone.
We make it really easy for people to just log in.
Before you start, if you would just introduce yourself. Thanks. Okay, yeah, I'm not trying to rush you.
I need my bigger copy.
Yeah. We should. Are you going to be able to do what you need while using the microphone?
Yeah, I'll be over there.
All righty.
Just gotta get it started. I think I should be able to plug it to the remote.
Yeah, understood.
Because if not, it's going to go flying off the table.
Good evening, my name is Brandon Carr with DeCoteau Engineering. I'm here for the Little Pond Village. We were here in February. And basically we went back, we took the issues that came up with the board, with the abutters, from the zoning board, some comments we received from the town engineer. We kind of took a step back, re-looked at the project, and made some changes that I hope addressed a lot of the concerns that were brought up. So what I was going to do was kind of just walk through the changes that have been made to the plan, and kind of
Don't make me.
I'm sorry,
That's
is that too bad?
That was a bit much, yeah.
Yeah, bit much, okay. All right, I guess we'll leave it like that, sorry.
It looks fine from here. Is anybody else having trouble with it because of the lighting?
Can you
No,
reduce,
I'm good. It's
get
just like,
the thing to fit on the screen, and we can see the whole thing?
if you move it up a bit.
It's just a matter of
No, just
adjusting the
move it, yeah, there we go.
throw.
There we go.
Well done.
All right, so, like I said, I'm just gonna walk through the changes we made to the plan. Not sure I've got, hopefully, the last interruption, but, I'm not sure if you want to ask questions as we go through each item or wait to the end, but I have about 10 or 12 major changes that I want to talk about, and then
Why don't you see about
Okay.
just going through your
Perfect.
presentation, see
All right.
how that works.
So, if you remember on the last version, basically, one of the big changes was we had retaining walls along this northern property line. And that was because we were grading up from the road and then just grading back at about 2-3% across the backyards, and then making up that difference right before we get to the property line with a retaining wall, or in some other areas a 2 or 3 to 1 slope. So what we did was we lowered the road, kind of made the pitch on the road a little less steep going into the high point. So that was able to lower the road about 1.5 feet throughout the whole site. And then what we did was we still graded up to the houses, but instead of just keeping it flat, we made the transition a grade over the side of the house, so you'll notice that there's some couple that have steps or just a 4-to-1 slope along the side, and that allowed us to basically match in to the existing grade along the back and keep the backyards fairly flat so that we don't have that drop off. So what we did with the backyards was we graded down to about 15 feet, 12 feet off the property line, and then we graded back up to existing to kind of almost make a depression in the backyards, and that was to keep the stormwater runoff from the backyards themselves from flowing towards the coastal bank like they were before. And the runoff in the back of the yards is just that. It's just the back of the yards. The roofs are still captured with the dry wells, and we have stone infiltration drip trenches on the side of the sheds to capture the runoff from the sheds' roofs. And we're proposing a split rail fence along that entire northern and eastern property line. So basically anywhere the site abuts woods, there's small 4-foot split rail fence instead of the stockade fence we were proposing before. On lots 12 and 13, the two down here, we took everything on the lot and slid it west about 20 feet to get greater separation off that coastal feature, that coastal bank, I mean. So we have about a 24-foot minimum buffer against that coastal feature between our limit of work and the coastal bank. Again, with these, we did the same thing where we transitioned the grade across the houses, so we were able to eliminate that retaining wall in the back. And again, those backyards are graded so to collect the stormwater from those backyards in the backyard. Similarly, along the abutters with Alma, along this entire property line, we did the same thing. We transitioned the grade over the houses. That, coupled with lowering the road, allowed us to get rid of that slope along the abutters here. We're still proposing the 6-foot-high solid wood fence along this property line. There was a lot of talk at the last meeting about, we had some stone infiltration trenches that ran along the property line. We just eliminated those. So those are gone from the design everywhere on the site, other than just along the sides of the sheds to catch the roofs on the sheds, because the sheds don't have a gutter system like the house. There was some questions on snow storage. So what we did, it was designed this way before, is the two areas over the underground infiltration systems, the one here up near Worcester Court and the one at this end near Alma. Those are just going to be grassed areas, and those are pitched towards the roadway, so if needed, snow could be piled in there, and as it melted, it would run into the storm drain system in the roadway and then go through the same treatment chain as the roadway drainage. We had a spillway between lots 6 and 7. That's been removed from the project entirely. Should just repeat all the stormwater on site, the pipes, the collection systems, the underground, the dry wells for the roofs, and all the depressions that we modeled in the backyards have been designed to fully convey and infiltrate the 100-year storm. There were some questions on how the limit of work was going to basically work along the perimeter of the site. So what we propose is at the minimum spot, so along basically the southern property line and the northern property line, we're proposing a limit of work that's 2 feet off the property line. So that's where the silt fence, so for example on this side, we're proposing a row of hay bales and a silt fence. So that silt fence would be located 2 feet off the property line. Then you'd have your hay bales. And we graded the site to ensure that all grades match into existing grade at least 5 feet from the property line to give room for that hay bale and silt fence to remain undisturbed. So basically the grade would match right in front of that hay bale, and then at the end of construction that hay bale and silt fence would be removed. I think I touched on fence types, but just to clarify, the side yard fences and then the fence along the abutters on Alma, 6-foot-high solid wooden fence, any fences that abut either the little pond side or the property to the north, split rail fence. We looked at the earthwork calculations again. There was some questions from the board on what we were doing for filling. From lowering the site, the roadway, which basically pushed down the whole site, like I said, about 1.5 feet, and from making that grade transition as you come out from the roadway across the houses instead of in the backyards, we knocked down that fill number to about, it's approximately 700 cubic yards of import, and that's over the course of the whole development. So that fill number is mostly associated with the actual house lots. So 28 houses, 700 yards, we're talking about 25 to 30 yards per house. So that, that import would be for fill around the foundation, things like that. So that would be spread out over the 2-3 years anticipated to build the development. It wouldn't be just like a mass earthwork exercise right at the beginning to bring in all this fill to build a road. We were to tie into that, we were asked to provide a construction sequence and schedule. So we outlined it in our response letter, but high level it would be, we would come in and propose to build the road first. So we on our erosion control plan, we showed a kind of an interim limit of work. So that was the roadway limit of work. So that's the limit of work, the limit of clearing for constructing the roadway, the stormwater basins, and the sedimentation control ponds for the site. And then the plan would be to kind of chip off 4 to 5 houses at a time. So that we wouldn't come in and just clear cut the entire site at once, build the road, and you'd have, cleared lot sitting there for a while. So the idea would be to, like I said, build the road and then kind of start chipping away at the lots. The intention would be to use the Worcester Court end as your construction entrance, and this end as the kind of the residence entrance, to keep that traffic separate, and also to keep any construction traffic from using the Alma road coming right in off of Worcester Court into the development. Like I said, the builder's anticipating probably a 2 to 3 year hopeful construction timeline. We would plan to start with the lots closer to the Alma side to get those built and situated and established to kind of act as a buffer to the residents for the northern side, so that they wouldn't be facing a construction site for the entire time. Get their side closed up first. The next one was, there was some, we talked about lot coverages. So I outlined building coverage and impervious coverage for the entire site, and then for the area within the 100-foot coastal bank buffer. So for the entire site, the limited disturbance is about 4 acres. And the total impervious coverage is, for the entire site, the entire site is 4.98 acres. Area disturbance is approximately 4 acres. There's a little over 2 acres of impervious that covers driveways, sheds, garages. We talked about kind of the potential garages, decks, sunrooms, the maximum build out, the houses, the roadway, all the impervious. It's a 43% impervious for the entire site. For the area within the 100-foot coastal bank buffer, it's 37%. Other than that, we submitted kind of a draft template of the homeowners covenants, outlining, the maintenance responsibilities. The association would maintain the roadway drainage, the 2 underground drainage systems, the sidewalks, things like that within the right-of-way. The homeowners would be responsible for the dry well maintenance and basically anything on their lot. The fences would be a mixture of those side lots falling under the homeowners association, since they are on that property line, and the rear lots, the rear fences being responsibility of each individual homeowner. We submitted a construction period erosion control plan and an operation and maintenance plan for the stormwater system. And those have been reviewed by the town engineer, and I've been meeting with him a couple times since our meeting. Had several letters going back and forth. I think the last one was issued yesterday or the day before, and pretty much knocked off all of his comments other than a few that still kind of relate more to the zoning side of things. Our wetland consultant submitted a turtle protection plan, which he can talk about, and then a memo kind of covering the applicability of the State Wetlands Protection Act, because this is, since being a 40B, we are under the state wetlands regulations. So Brian did a memo kind of outlining how we meet those regulations. So I was going to turn it over to Brian, and he can talk about the things that he did, and then we can go into questions.
Thank you.
Brian Madden from LEC Environmental. To start with, I had gone out there end of February and flagged, where's the pointer? Flagged the closest BVW boundary to the property site on the town property, which was, there's two little lobes over here that are part of the Atlantic White Cedar Swamp. That is not part of the vernal pool habitat associated with that wetland system. If you recall, the off-site wetland system has two lobes that are separated or connected via a very narrow ditch that was excavated in the past. The westerly lobe is the larger area that functions as vernal pool habitat, where there was previously documented spotted salamander and wood frog activity, breeding activity. The eastern side, it's much smaller, more terrestrial in nature, and that was the closest BVW to the proposed work activity. So I went out there and reestablished that boundary, which was relatively coincident with what previously had flagged. It's that boundary is relatively TOA slope wetland boundary, so it's not much change over there. We had submitted the turtle protection plan at the last meeting. I had kind of talked about the broad strokes behind that, but we did formalize that plan, and we have received natural heritage approval on that plan. And just again to review the highlights of that, prior to the start of work, during the turtle active season, which is sometime in April through October, in-trench silt fencing will be encircled around the entire construction footprint, and then a turtle sweep will be conducted within the interior of the project footprint, being about 4 acres. Natural heritage requires 4 hours of effort for each acre that you're searching, so it's a 16-hour effort over. So that would probably be conducted by 2 to 3 staff over at least 2 days. And then any turtles found, the one comment that Natural Heritage did have was we were proposing to relocate the turtles somewhere over here. On the east side, they had requested that we put it more on the north side, so that will fall on the northerly property boundary, and obviously there's more contiguous open space on the town property. So again, we got Natural Heritage approval on that, submitted a copy of the protection plan, and then had provided a summary letter that kind of reviewed some of the changes that ran concurrent with DePreet's cover letter. And again, with the limit of work, reductions and increases to the down gradient wetland resource areas, and the overall project updates, all of that has led to greater protection for the down gradient coastal banks and the bordering vegetated wetland, including the vernal pool habitat, isolated land subjects of flooding. As Brandon touched upon, there's comprehensive erosion and control sedimentation plan being implemented, so there'll be hay bales in addition to the silt fence that I described in the turtle protection plan. And really with the backyards, now the slope's being reduced and it's more of a flatter grade with a little depression, that vegetated swale for stormwater purposes. You know, you're not going to have that retaining wall right up against the limit of work as we previously was at the last meeting. It's more of a gentler slope between the units and the limit of work. So again, that the interests associated with the coastal bank are storm damage prevention and flood control. The erosion control plan will serve to protect that during construction, those functions and values. The stormwater pollution prevention plan as well, which was submitted, and the O&M plan will contribute to resource area protection as well. And also, if you remember, we had it. We had a sediment trap over here, relatively close to the limit of work on the top of the coastal bank. That was relocated, so now it's over in this location, based on those discussions at the last meeting. All that was revised to help protect the downgradient resource areas. And just to reiterate, because this is filing the land under the Wetlands Protection Act, the state act, there are no performance standards for work in the buffer zone. The measure is your work within the buffer zone going to adversely affect the resource area's ability to provide its interests or functions and values. And again, for coastal bank, that's storm damage prevention and flood control. For the BVW, the offsite BVW, which at a closest point, 14 minutes, which at its closest point is,
I hate this laptop.
50 feet on lot 11 here to that recently refreshed wetland flagging, and then 90 feet to the vernal pool on lot 7. So those are the two closest points. But the work in the buffer zone through the during construction and post-construction measures, the project will serve to protect the functions and values associated with those wetlands, being wildlife habitat, groundwater supply, flood control, storm damage prevention, prevention of pollution, and as Brandon had mentioned, of the wildlife-friendly fence, the post and rail, split rail fence along the back portions, and then the stockade fence abutting the abutters. So that basically summarizes the updates, and I guess we'll turn it over to questions.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Jen?
I have a couple of questions for Brian. Did you submit Natural Heritage's approval of your plan to us?
I don't believe I forwarded that to you. I can send it to you.
That would be helpful.
Yep.
2, have you obtained your science collection permit yet?
Not yet, but that will be obtained prior to the start of work.
And when is the anticipated start work date?
Once they get through ZBA, I believe.
Would be this fall.
Fall? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
And your turtle protection plan, so Natural Heritage is requiring you to go out twice?
that's what I propose, yeah.
Yeah, twice during the construction period. So at the last hearing, we were told that the lots are gonna be, sold in like little groupings.
Yep.
And so it could be a multi-year process.
Yep.
So you'll be going out there on an annual basis
Yes.
to do that?
So like at this time of the year, what I'm doing a lot is checking sites under construction to make sure the temporary turtle barriers are in good working order and facilitate any repairs necessary. Natural Heritage requires as part of that plan that site evaluation be conducted, those repairs conducted by April 1st, unless
But then
time
you'll,
conditions.
on an annual basis, you'll go in and look for the turtles.
As long as that barrier is maintained, and basically the elements of the protection plan include the barrier around the entire perimeter, the initial sweep, But the other half of that is contractor education and contractor awareness and maintenance of those barriers. Basically, during the active season, they have to do weekly inspections to make sure everything's upright, no limbs or anything have fallen on the fencing, and then maintenance of these gates. Basically, at the two entrances, there's going to be gates that are going to be open and closed on a daily basis during the active season.
So you're telling me that natural heritage, even though it says searches must take place within the 4-acre footprint during 2 non-consecutive days, is going to be done once for this project?
Correct, yep. And as long as those barriers are maintained, you basically have a clean.
Does Natural Heritage know that this project is going to have, is going to be done in phases? Are they aware of that?
Not explicitly, but as long as the barrier is maintained, turtles aren't getting into the site.
Well, the turtles that may not be able to get into the site, but the ones you miss
Can't
when
get
you're
out.
doing your 4-hour survey and they're buried underground,
And they can't get out.
when they're, hibernating.
Well, we're not doing this survey when they're hibernating.
Well, I didn't say that. I said, but, that's a big site. Trust me, I've done this work. I know how long it takes to find a turtle. I would like you to double check with Natural Heritage and ask them if they are aware that this is going to be done in phases, and if they will require you to go out there on an annual basis. Let's say if you're doing, if you're working in the winter, that's fine, but if you're going out in the springtime in an active season, I'd just like you to double check with Natural Heritage on that and forward me their approval,
Yep.
please.
Just to follow up on that, so the barriers are maintained, and the 16-hour effort that was approved by Natural Heritage is targeted at times when turtles are active. And I have a lot of experience doing this type of work.
So do I.
And we're not going to be out there at times when they're not active. So.
No, I understand that. What I'm asking is Natural Heritage aware that the proposed project is going to be done in phases, that in this spring or fall, you may be doing 4 lots, and then next spring, you may be going in to clear 4 additional lots or 5 additional lots? Because I'm pretty sure that's what we were told at the last hearing, that the whole site wasn't going to be completely
Cleared. Yep.
you cleared,
That's
and
what
that
Brandon just
you were
said.
going to be going in as you sold the lots. So again, I would like you to confirm with Natural Heritage that they're aware that there's going to be active construction, like periodically in here, not just, clear the lot once and start building the houses. That, this is going to be a fairly vegetated area over the next 2 years, 3 years.
Yep, no, we can get that confirmation.
Thank you.
I would just reiterate that this is not within a mapped habitat, so we are voluntarily proposing to do this protection.
That's fine. I just want to make sure Natural Heritage is aware, that's all. Couldn't tell. I'm all set, Brian, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, John. Mark?
Yeah, with this regrading now, the French drain or equivalent that was along the south property line is just gone completely?
It's gone completely, yes. So
Is it graded so that any runoff will be captured within your property and not running off south?
yeah, so I should actually, I should point that out too. In our stormwater report and in my response letter, I have a view showing that, so this area of the site, this property line, this area, the kind of the backyards where they're infiltrating, that's also accepting a large portion of these abutters. There's about an acre of off-site area that flows onto our site today that we're, so by dropping those backyards, so, if you were to look at it in a kind of section view, you'd come down from the house, there'd be a low depression, and then we grade back up to the property line. So all that water that's flowing from the abutters is still flowing onto our site, and we've accommodated that in our, we've shown in our calculations that the ability to infiltrate that water in those backyards.
You don't have, do you have the active collection of that water, or is it simply just gonna sit in a swale?
It's, you know, it's a 12 to 20 foot wide swale. It's the sandy soils, the conditions out there. We modeled it basically as an infiltration basin. I think we modeled through the 2 and the 100-year storms. It fully infiltrates the 100-year storm on our site without backing up onto the abutters. And I just did a comparison. I looked back at the rainfall totals for the closest metering station, which is in East Falmouth, for the past 5 years, and looked up like the biggest storm that you've gotten down here, and it was, I believe it was in September of 2013. It was a little over 4 inches of rain, which basically corresponds to the 10-year storm. And we modeled that storm on that side. So that side is accepting our backyards and also the backyards of these abutters, and it was, I think it pooled a little less than 2 inches in that storm. So that's using, you know, we explained last time, we did actual on the ground, in the ground infiltration tests along the site, and we applied a factor safe. Basically, I think we did 5 tests, and they ranged from 45 inches an hour to some of them, I think we got over 100, and we took the lowest test, and then we halved that. So we applied a factor of safety to that. So we're using a pretty conservative infiltration rate, we feel, on the site as well. So we feel confident that, yes, it's still all grading onto our site, and we've sized it appropriately to accept that water and infiltrate that water.
That looks good. Just a sort of general comment, the plan is starting at the access to Almond Road, you're gonna strip the whole property and start building, strip it, I mean, down the dirt.
In the roadway, yeah, so we would.
What about where the houses are, that gets, and their backyards? I'm not.
Yeah, eventually.
I don't mean to sound argumentative, I'm just trying to understand, so that's the plan is.
Yeah, the plan would be to go in and, you know, to grade down to existing on the road, we'd probably need about 20 feet on each side to grade that, you know, shoulder down. So, you know, you take this kind of pod, I guess, for example.
And then as you move in, I mean, you'll strip, say, the first 5 lots, start building.
So, like, in this area, if, you know, it would be cleared from here, from here north, basically, to construct the road in that underground basin. We would leave the trees here until we're ready to build those lots. At that point, we would clear back to the kind of permanent limit of work. But we would leave those trees in the interim until we needed to clear them for the lot construction.
Thank you. So.
Peter?
Thank you. I have to commend you on your thoroughness. One of the things, item number 9, site feature stakeout. I went out and I could correlate between the drawings and the stakes. And one of the letters that we received from a butter, Edward Jelowick at 54 Alma Road, expressed his concern removing vegetation and building near the coastal banks to the north and south of the site will endanger their long-term stability, as well as impairing their function of wildlife habitat. These banks are made of soft, sifting sand and can be easily disturbed. The town-owned land to the north provides an important storm water buffer to the area, and the coastal banks are a key part of this function. And according to the Massachusetts regulations, 310 CMR 1030, parentheses 6, any project on such a coastal bank or within 100 feet landward of the top of such coastal bank shall have no adverse effects on the stability of the coastal bank. And we are talking, I was out at the site today, and the coastal banks seem to be built on sand. And the construction within 100 feet could split or make the stability of the coastal banks split or have water run down or whatever. And I haven't seen anything about the stability of the coastal banks.
So I can explain kind of how we created the site, but I might turn it over to Brian to talk about the adverse impacts of the coastal bank. So one thing we tried to do when eliminating those walls, we wanted to make sure that there was no stormwater flowing down those backyards and then directly over that coastal bank to, you know, cause erosion or instability to the bank. So that's one of the reasons why we, like I just explained, it graded down from the house so that, you know, kept the backyards almost as a depression, so that that water, and it's only the water falling in the actual backyards on the grass that's going on the coastal bank side that's going into that depression, and sizing that depression so that it would infiltrate the 100-year storm. It won't spill over, and there'll be no surface flow over that coastal bank. So that's how we handled it from a grading standpoint and a stormwater standpoint. Did you move the? Yes. Thank you. So yeah, that would be, you know, in this area. So we sized this, you know, backyard depression to basically take lot 9, for example, to accept the stormwater that's falling on this backyard and infiltrate it without having it flow off north and over that bank. Did you have anything to add? Or?
I guess just containing that stormwater post-development will ensure the stability. So there's not any runoff going off-site, creating any erosion or, you know, potential impacts to the root system of the vegetation on the coastal bank. So,
Well, I have a concern about the stability. I'm thinking if you picture a sandcastle at the beach and a bucket of sand plopped on like the little kids make, the sand from the bucket, the mound, splits sometimes due to the natural forces of being not surrounded by other particles of sand. And when that coastal barrier, if it's not supported on one end and there is heavy construction, maybe digging or heavy construction machinery passing within the 100-foot, the land actually could be unstable and open up a split, and the split could, even though the grading is all set, but if it splits, all the water will go down the split and erode. I'm talking about stability of the soil, not just runoff.
during construction.
And after construction, if all the tree roots are dead, it could loosen up everything.
Okay. So with the limits of work to the coastal bank, to the property, between the limits of work and the coastal bank to the north, just to clarify, the coastal bank along this, while the underlying soils are sandy in nature, this is a well-vegetated, mature forest that has an organic layer, has a well-defined topsoil layer. It's not until when you get out to the more exposed artificial banks based on the prior excavation activity on the town property that you have unstable slopes in some respects. So this is by all means a stabilized coastal bank, and certainly on 12 and 13 are as well. Again, a fully mature forested bank. I would say that the proposed, based on the grade changes, you're avoiding and eliminating the potential for runoffs or creating of gullies or erosions by having that flatter slope in the back portions and maintaining all your regrading or fill being introduced closer to the roadway. So I think, you know, the likelihood of having a major breach and then getting into the buffer zone, then ultimately the coastal bank and having some adverse effect on the vegetation stability would be, you know, pretty catastrophic sequence of events I couldn't fathom would need to take place.
Is it correct that the 100-foot coastal bank buffer Zone B goes right through the road?
The 100-foot buffer zone is right here. Yep.
Okay. Okay. Both questions.
Okay, so Jamie, you're not on the quorum. Kevin?
I feel compelled to comment that last time I asked a question, and I admitted at that time it really isn't within our jurisdiction, but I heard what could possibly be a little conflict with tonight. That is to say that we want to all be happy that this project goes as planned and that all of the less than market rate houses are built. And if you have a construction sequencing that is only going to develop some of the homes before you start to clear the rest of the site, how can you guarantee that the last 4 houses won't be the 4 houses that are at below market rate?
I don't think I don't need the clicker. For the record, I'm Peter.
Sorry, sir.
Sorry, it's okay. I'm Peter Freeman, Freeman Law Group, representing the applicant. And I came tonight just in case there are questions like this, although that's really the 40B part. But rest assured that the subsidizing agencies, as well as there will likely be a condition from the zoning board, that you can't just build willy-nilly all market houses. For every 3 market houses that are built, there will be a requirement that there is at least one, the 25% affordable. So if it's pods of 4, then that's how it's going to happen. So you wouldn't be left with that scenario you mentioned, which is certainly a legitimate concern from the development viewpoint, but rest assured that simply cannot happen. Thanks.
Again, I'm sure that that's what will happen, but how do you guarantee that you're not going to, are you going to be able to spread them out in such a way that you aren't going in and having to clear the whole site?
Well, that's a combination, I gather, of both part of the earlier presentation as well as this question of the 25% affordable. That's why I think Brandon mentioned that they would be in pods of, in all likelihood, 4, so that you have the 25% affordable. And then, although it may or may not be formally phased in terms of a phasing plan per se, but just the normal development sequence for absorption, as we call it in the industry, when you have 28 units, even in a good market, it's unlikely that you're going to sell probably even half of them in 1 year. So with any development, this is not unique, with any development, there would be the absorption process, and they would continue to build, and it's possible that maybe they build 8 at a time if they have a lot of pre-sales. But the point is, it would all be sequenced in a logical fashion, and the zoning board certainly would have conditions in terms of whether you call it a formal phase or not, but a review of the plans and the construction sequencing. Those are all routine conditions with the 40B permit.
Supposedly.
Maureen?
Well, besides always shuddering when 40B comes in front of us, this This is the first thing I want to talk about, this pretty landscape picture. I think when you bring something to us, you should only have things on your lot lines. It looks like you're really doing a nice job with green, and you have no green, hardly at all, except what's in our jurisdiction. So I think it's unfair to represent this as a beautiful green area when you are literally denuding an entire piece of property that will only have little teeny postage stamped sodded lawns that give no habitat to anything, maybe earthworms. But I think it's disingenuous to show that to us, that you're doing such a beautiful green job, because this is not a green project.
I'd just like to point out, we're not representing that we're planting that green, that's the existing wood, so that's our
Well, that's not
limit
your
of-
project. That land doesn't belong to you.
We didn't represent that it did.
Well, you're showing it on the plan.
You're showing it.
You're showing it.
We're showing Worcester Court and Alma Road as well, we're not proposing to build those.
All right, I'm just for the
I
public record,
understand, yeah.
that it really is the improper perception of what we are going to be permitting, or what you are going to be giving to this town as a project. That's number one.
Noted.
Number two, with this conceptual project plan of landscape, I would like to know how you're gonna store the snow and have your swale where you have all the shrubbery up by Almond Road and down everywhere where you said you were gonna have. How are you gonna put snow there?
So we, I should mention, this is an older plan from October that was in the
Well.
presentation for this is the old zoning board presentation, I was just keeping on
Then shame on
the
you.
first few slides here, but we've received comments from the town and we've proposed to remove those plantings
Sir.
along here to push these back along the property line. Back here, we have about a 12 to 15 foot buffer between our system and the property line to do a row of evergreen screening in the same here.
Well, again, shame on you that this is an old plan and you're bringing it to us.
It wasn't my intention to show that
I know
plan
it's not your
tonight.
intention, it's just like
It just
natural
got flipped
heritage.
to it by mistake.
Well, it's a
and I
big
apologize for
project,
that.
and I think it should be comprehensive and up to date. And I think that that's what we should be seeing, not something from your last plan. I do commend you, I like all the improvements with getting rid of the wall. I mean, there were a lot of, the swale that was
I think it's a
discharging.
much better
You've done
project.
great improvements, but there's a lot of other things now that, reading through, that bring up even more questions. Because of snow, on Cape Cod, usually everybody that plows, at least in my expertise, they come through because we don't just get snow, we get ice. So there's a salt ice issue that goes on, and they come in with sand. So you are now proposing, my concern was, with the snow, where are you gonna pile it? Now, when you plow snow, you build sand up, and all you're gonna do is you're gonna be putting fines on top of your leach fields. So I just wanna make sure that that's taken into consideration of maintenance, because it does happen, I see it all the time. Swales fill up with fines, and they no longer work, and they just become little wetlands, which isn't a bad thing. I think it's kind of ironic that we were taking turtles off of this property and we're putting it on town property. But I'm glad that you're saving them. I know, they are better protected on town property. It's just kind of ironic that you're gonna move the problem, the threat. That being said, I really think that the letter that you send to Natural Heritage, we get a copy of what you sent to them and what their response is, so that we're sure that you're telling them that you're doing this in phases, not, all right, so just make sure we have both the asking and the giving. In your stormwater pollution prevention plan, it's more curiosity than anything, because after reading all your best management plans, I'm sure it's okay. But could you explain to me what chemical treatment for erosion and sediment control is?
One product I think of that I've seen used on some of our sites, we wouldn't propose it here, I don't think we would have a need for it. It's more used for stockpile. So if you have a large stockpile of soil, there's a product they use, I forget the name of it, but it's
called?
It's almost like a
HAM.
Very diluted
Polymer.
I don't want to call it a glue because it's not a glue, but it's like a bonding agent, and it forms a film over the stockpile that I think it's supposed to last like 30 to 60 days, and it just biodegradable, and it just kind of
Well,
forms a shell.
when you read this,
Yep.
it kind of gives me a little twitch, because when it says chemical stabilizers, blah, 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 it goes on and on and on, and then it says how they have to control them because of their toxicity. So I just want to make sure,
I can remove that from the plan. We wouldn't be using something like that out here, but I can.
okay, please. Only because when it says you'll minimize discharge risk from stored chemicals, you know, we just don't want to see it. There's always human error.
Yep, I agree.
So that can get removed. And then you're talking about using calcium chloride for dust control? Okay, which, I mean, that's, everybody does. I just want to make sure you're not using some other chemical. And why are you notifying the Rhode Island Department of Environmental Management?
That's a typo. I'll fix that. What page is that on, so I can?
I read, you know, I had a really good English teacher. Page 23.
Put it in there.
Because they have Providence office.
This is the test.
Well, we
That's
do
a
read
good-
this stuff
that's a good
amazingly,
catch,
as
'cause-
boring as it is.
That's a good catch.
Now.
Okay, and then it says, is it at all likely that the site operator will need to implement construction dewatering in order to complete the proposed project? And it says yes. Where's the dewatering
No,
going to take?
that would not be anticipated. We usually
That's-
leave a provision
that's
in
page
case they
24.
do, but they,
Okay,
yep.
page 24.
Excess boilerplate.
Here, you want that?
Yeah, exactly.
They're all already marked up. The next question is on, this is LEC's March 12th one. On the page 2 or 4, I was just curious, and I'm gonna ask this of Jen. Doing, no, it's just a question about the vernal pool, doing it in February. When do we usually do vernal pool assessments?
Not in February.
Okay, so that's what I was gonna ask you. The peepers came out exactly on March 31st. So it might be practical to go out there and just see.
Yeah, we didn't represent, we were doing a vernal pool assessment. and
Okay,
Sorry if that was,
all right.
it made it feel like that. But no, yeah, all I was commenting on was that little area that it did hold standing water,
Yeah.
but it's relatively shallow. The hydrology is likely not there to sustain any amphibian development.
You know, February it's kind of tough.
I'm just talking about max water levels.
Okay, all right, and that being said, how did you determine the wetland line? Through the plants or the soils, or?
Both.
Both, okay.
But again, it's relatively well defined by topography. It's an unnatural slope based on the old excavation work out there.
Okay.
So it's kind of toe a slope to a well or a wetland boundary.
Okay, and then,
We have the data sheet.
okay.
Yeah, and I did a
must
field
not-
data.
I don't read all those, that's your job.
I know.
She's a data sheet person. Let's see, that was all for LEC. All right, DePietri Engineering. All right, I did that one, the snow. And then on sheet, oh, I have a question. If you missed turtles, and you, I mean, they might want to run and hide when they see your equipment coming, so.
Yeah, I was gonna mention that we would have no problem with doing additional turtle sweeps at the beginning of each, before we clear.
Like
you know,
each,
for
what did you call them,
pod, or,
Pod.
we could do an annual one every spring, or another sweep every spring, and then do, before we were to move into another area of houses, do another sweep before
I just want to
the
know
clearing.
what,
But we
yeah.
have no
I mean-
issues with additional sweeps during the time of construction.
Okay.
So the turtle
You don't have to sweep it.
barriers,
Winter, but.
the turtle barriers?
Yep.
Are they permanent, once you do the sweep?
I'll let Brian.
I'm not very familiar with turtle
I believe
barriers.
it's a permanent entrenched silt fence, right?
Yeah, no, it's just entrenched silt fencing, 3 feet, so it's 6 inches in the ground and 2.5 feet above grade.
Okay.
So generally.
And they're gonna be along wherever you're working? You said they're permanent.
Around the entire perimeter, yeah.
Oh, okay, all right. I'm thinking you're doing them after you've done your sweep, then you're gonna keep them out of where you're gonna be working. but that's not what it's gonna be.
No, basically want to remove them from the entire construction footprint, and then if we're gonna, come back and do a follow-up sweep in a little pod area, we can certainly make sure there's
We
no
might
turtles.
condition that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And then,
Because we would love you to find more turtles and just put them on our property.
we'd like you to plant all the turtles on our property.
Yeah, just put them
There's
all
a
over.
lot of good
Oh.
nesting happening.
We'll take care of them.
And then, why aren't you, not that it's in our jurisdiction, but why aren't you putting like a silt fence, a hay bale around this whole lot with the slopes that you do have?
No, we are proposing hay bales and silt fence.
On the whole thing? I
Oh,
didn't
are
think
you
you're doing the
saying?
north side.
Oh, yeah, just within the jurisdictional areas.
Well,
There's not really any
Okay.
grade changes up against
Okay.
like the neighbors or anything like that.
Wait a minute, I just got confused on something.
So silt fence around the entire,
Yeah?
hay bales within jurisdiction.
Oh, okay, yep, got it, thank you.
and thank you for installing the split rail fence
No problem.
Yep.
for a visual and also
Yep,
wildlife.
no, I think it serves a
And
good purpose.
number, I do give compliments when they deserve.
Thank you.
And then on sheet 9, you're talking about the grade changes, and again, I commend you for, trying to make these swales instead of the big stone wall. But on that north side, am I reading this correctly, the grade changes like 14, 15, 16, 17, that are the dark black hash line, is that the?
Yeah, those are the proposed
Okay, so I guess being a raindrop, wouldn't I go between those? Well, you've got them, the slope goes like this, and you've got them sort of like this. Is that what you're gonna try and do, is just slow it
So-
down?
Yeah, so,
Or are you making sluiceways?
basically, I mean, since we're following, the backyard's, it's sloping two ways. We have, if you're looking this way, we have the kind of depression that way. But then it's also sloping, this is the low point in the road, so these are sloping this similarly to the road. So they're really, there's kind of forming a swale here, but in our analysis, we showed there's really, I don't want to call it swale because there's no water running down it. The areas are so small that it's really just infiltrating almost in place. Like I said, some of the larger storms, there's actually no ponding on the north side. Down on the south side, there's a small, inch or two of ponding for the, above 4 or 5 inches of rain. But, in practice, it's gonna look like a very, wide, very gentle swale, but it won't be flowing with water.
All right, well, the reason I'm asking that is, lot number 11, you have an elevation change of 19.
Yep.
All right, well, around it is 18, so isn't that kind of a hill? Isn't that a
yeah.
foot higher in that little spot?
It's a foot higher from here to here, which is, we kept the backyard grades under 4%, which is a pretty gentle slope.
But again,
so-
isn't that sloping,
This is slope, so this would be a high point sloping both that way and that way.
so where's it sloping, where's the runoff gonna go to? Which direct,
This, it would almost be a break line here. This water would be running back kind of around this area, and this water would, if it was to run, be running down that area.
okay. All right. I was thinking more of a mound in a swale
Well,
type thing,
we
so
do
that it
have-
wouldn't go in there.
Yeah, we did model a mound kind of from the property line, so that there is gonna be a slight incline up to the property line to keep that water from not flowing.
And where's that on the plan? Point it to me.
It's right here, so this would be, the low point would be kind of in the middle here, and it would be sloping up in both directions there. And I think on page, if you go to page 7, I think it is, the grading plan, on the left side, there's typical section A, and that's kind of a section through that backyard, so you can see on the left, it's kind of almost, imagine if you were sitting in the back of lot 9, that's how it would be.
All right, well, that's good, that's all good. Then, what are the, right on the limit of work to the east, there are two, they have 16 and 16, which are grade changes. What are those for?
Those are just that kind of depression in the backyard, so that area is fairly flat in this direction, so instead of forming a swale, they kind of just form a low spot in that
So you made a
backyard.
low spot there to capture
Exactly,
it.
to capture that water.
Okay, that's good too. All right, and I think that's it. for now.
Thank you, Maureen. Courtney?
Yeah, I have a couple of sort of follow-on things and then an overview question. So the follow-on thing is, as a self-respecting eastern box turtle who wants to cross to the other side, I'm going to encounter this anti-eastern box turtle barrier, which of course will upset me, and I will need to find a way to get in. Well, it happens that you have an opening because you go in through you have all your construction vehicles. So is there going to be a turkey guard, I'm sorry, not a turkey, but a box turtle guard at the entrance to keep the box turtles from going in?
So there is, yeah, there'll be silt fence across the entrance that they'll open at the beginning of the day and close when they leave.
Well, and that's good, because I'm going to plan to come through at 11.
Okay.
So I need an answer to your question.
No, he's still the turtle.
Oh, he's still the turtle?
He's still the turtle.
I'm still the turtle, so I'm coming at 11.
So based on what I've seen in some of the letters submitted, the turtles have been found somewhere over here.
Do that a little slower, you're giving me
No,
like a migraine.
I'm posing making it sound ridiculous, but it's not ridiculous. You're creating a barrier, but it's open during the work hours. And I'm suggesting you have no control. That's an issue.
Yeah, so basically the silt fence will go to the roadway, so a turtle will have to, if they want to curl around, go onto the roadway to get in. You know,
Well, that's a problem, isn't it?
They're fast.
I think the turtle is smart enough to, you know, if they're gonna.
I've dealt with a lot of eastern box turtles, and I can tell you, the turtles have their own mind. You want them to go one way, and they're going to turn around and go the other.
Yeah.
Particularly if they're nesting.
I would imagine that, you know, some of the movement patterns are, you know, if they're found over here, then they're kind of going in this direction. So.
I just think you need to address that. We don't.
Yeah, the contractors are going to be educated and, you know.
Well, I understand,
they'll
but
keep an eye out as much as
how are you going to keep me out at 11 o'clock?
Could I just follow up on that contractor thing, because this has been on my mind? So let's say they see a turtle walking by on the work site. What is their protocol to do at that point?
So prior to the start of work, we hand out materials that aid in the identification of box turtle, and I think most contractors on the Cape are familiar with box turtles to some degree. So you go through an identification process. There's also a protocol, kind of a spec sheet that we pass around that, you know, once a turtle is found, the measures to relocate the turtle. Basically, to photograph and then to relocate along that northerly property line.
Okay, so whoever finds the turtle relocates it?
Yeah,
Okay.
and then immediately they have to do a full perimeter inspection of the barriers to make sure there's no gaps or holes or anything like that.
Why do I have this feeling this
Does that make
turtle's
you feel
going to
any
be
better?
hauled across that fence?
Well, I guess as a turtle, I might get frustrated by that. Okay, so that's one thing. I just, going on, refresh me again about the dry wells off of the roof runoff that you originally had located in the driveways under the pavement.
Yeah, it's tough to see on this.
They're right
Kind
here.
of washed out, but we split the dry wells in two to make them smaller and easier to fit in the lot, and we have one in this backyard and one in the front yard. We propose them in areas that aren't under pavement and aren't under street trees or conflict of utilities or things like that.
They're not under pavement.
They're not under pavement.
Here they are, right
Okay.
here. They're right there.
Okay. Now, I think I'll agree with Maury that you've made a lot of improvements, particularly in the drainage. You've given it a lot of thought. And so that's good. But the critical element to this all working, not only during construction, but down the road in the long term, is that these drainage systems are maintained, whether they're dry wells or swales or catch basins or what. You commented that some of this is going to be the responsibility of the individual homeowners, and some of it's going to be the responsibility of the association. And, you know, I've lived long enough to know that when you have a lot of divided responsibility, you don't have a good situation. So the first question comes to mind is, this needs to be thought out, and this is a high-density development. It goes one beyond, or several beyond, a form of development that was popular in the 70s called cluster zoning, where you had small-sized lots and you had open space and so on. This goes almost, it's almost akin, as I look at it, because of the density, because of the proximity of the homes, the size of the lots. It's akin to a condominium in many respects.
Oh, sure.
Now, so condominium association have, and developments have homeowners associations. So how is this homeowner, how is this structured? Does the developer have let's say that, I forgot, how many lots are there here?
28.
Yeah, so in effect, there would be, whatever the lot numbers are, 20-something, votes. Does that mean that if one house is sold, that the developer retains the balance of the votes? In other words, what's the controlling authority here?
So I'll just walk through the whole.
You follow what I'm
saying?
saying?
I get exactly what you're saying. So Peter can jump in if I'm wrong, but typically the way the homeowners association would be structured is once half the houses are sold, the homeowners association would be established to take over the maintenance of, of those pieces. Okay. So up until then, it would be the contractor's responsibility. That's typically how we spell it out in our operation and maintenance plan and in our soil, construction period, erosion control plan. In meeting with the town engineer, we also talked about, the majority of the stormwater is under the homeowners association. The dry wells are under the individual lots. And they had some requests that, the covenants, the homeowners covenants require, so the O&M requires twice a year inspection and maintenance of all the stormwater. Some of them are, I think, even more than that, and they detail what time of year you're supposed to sweep the streets, inspect the underground basins, inspect your dry wells, all of that. In the back of that plan, there's maintenance forms that are to be filled out when those inspections and that maintenance is done. And we break it into inspections, routine maintenance, and then kind of repairs if needed. And we've agreed to have, so for the dry wells, have those homeowners, as part of their requirements, have to submit those maintenance forms to the homeowners association, and then that homeowners association to submit them to the town to make sure that that maintenance is going on. And I think even the stipulation was under the purview of the Conservation Commission that would be submitted.
So you establish a homeowners association that has governance what percentage, 50%?
It's typically 50.
Okay, so.
Yeah, it might be more than, at a certain point, it would go from the
Yeah,
contractor.
whatever the certain point is. Okay, so the certain point isn't all. And I presume that the homeowners would all have to pay dues.
Correct. for
Now,
maintenance,
does
yeah.
the contractor pay dues on the balance? In other words, what
Yeah.
funds this homeowners thing?
In most situations, even though the homeowners association is established as soon as the houses are sold and there are owners other than the developer, but in most situations, the developer is going to, in all
Could you speak up? I'm a little loud.
in most situations, the developer is going to continue with that maintenance under the O&O O&M plan, but it is legally the responsibility of the homeowners association. Unlike condominium associations, where there are often other maintenance responsibilities for buildings and things like that, where it's a more substantial monthly fee, typically the homeowners association fee is a matter of, don't hold me to it, but $200 or $300 per year. And I presume that that amount of money would be collected at the time of each closing to fund, the ongoing expenses, and then annually. So that has typically, in my experience, been sufficient for single-family home ownership developments like this.
Yeah, also, I mean, an HOA has officers, they're responsible for making sure that the things that the covenants require get done.
And we did submit, I'm sure I wasn't here at the previous hearing, as you know, but you had asked, perhaps through the chair, that we submit a draft of pertinent provisions. I can't remember if we submitted an entire sample. And we did that, and, I'm familiar with them, and they seemed appropriate to me, but certainly, as you go through it, if you see any tweaking that you would like in the provisions of that HOA that we submitted, certainly that's fine. We can work with you on that.
I just have one question, sir. Sorry, Madam Chairman. Well, when the HOA, and you have to understand where at least the town staff is coming from, we do have another development in town where the developer eventually was no longer involved in the site, and there has been a lot of issues on that because there is no developed HOA or people we can contact. So when the homeowners association is formed, do they submit something with the zoning board of appeals? Do they submit something with the town? How are we supposed to know who to contact? Like if we get complaints that the stormwater system is failing, runoff's going everywhere, turtles can't get through, Courtney's stuck in a fence somewhere, who do we contact? Is it, like I said, is it established? I know it's established, but are they required to inform the ZBA? Is my question.
The short answer is that would be a typical condition in a 40B permit, a comprehensive permit.
Okay, that's all I need to know. I'll check with ZBA.
And we're certainly happy to do that, be voluntarily or as a condition that's in there.
Yeah, okay.
And again, there is full legal authority, much like a condominium association. There is full legal authority that the homeowners association would have, including collecting the dues, so
Oh, absolutely. That doesn't concern me.
No,
We just
understood.
need
I
to
understand your question.
concern
I just
on
wanted
a
to say
contact.
for everybody's benefit.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Go ahead, Courtney, continue.
Yeah, I guess, because I've had experience with homeowners associations almost from the beginning of their existence. And the ones that I've had contact with or experience with, the homeowners association sort of came into being at the time they drafted the covenants and got the subdivision approved and so forth. And essentially the contractor, to begin with, until the lots started to get sold, was the homeowners association. And then as individual lots were sold off, they determined what percentage of dues each would take. And then eventually when a certain percentage, when the mass reached a certain point, the residents would become the homeowners association. They would set the dues, and the unsold lots would be charged the same rate of dues as so on. Is that how this is going to work?
The short answer is yes. Again, the exact timing and sequence, but you explained it exactly correctly, so that there's always the ongoing continuity.
Right. So to start with, the homeowners association will have its address would be the developer's address until such time.
Sure, sure. And again, those are recorded documents, which
Right.
doesn't speak to the good question that Jennifer asked, but, to identify who the contact person is. But again, they're documents.
But at this point, you haven't gotten that far down the road.
No, other than a draft, which, as I say, we submitted,
right.
but that would be down the road, correct?
So if we set an order, if we put conditions in the order of conditions that references homeowners association, once it's established, then they become a party to this order of conditions?
Well, I don't think unless my wetlands experts tell me that it would be unusual to have such a condition, I don't see a problem with having such a condition as part of your order of conditions. I wouldn't say that they're a party, but they are duty-bound. Each individual owner is subject to the order of conditions.
Why not make them a party to it?
Well, it's not a question of a party per se, because you issue it. What the homeowners association will say, and I think it's in the draft that we sent, is that it is subject to all of the requirements of the Chapter 40B comprehensive permit and the Conservation Commission order of conditions. So in that sense, technically I wouldn't say they're parties, but they're equally bound to follow it, and that is spelled out in the homeowners association document.
Right.
Okay, I'll go back to being a turtle. I'm done.
Thank you.
Okay, I actually have a couple specific little, they're small questions about the homeowners agreement. On the first part, the restrictions, item 6 says no building material of any kind or character blah, blah, blah. And I'm wondering if, granted, the entire development is not under our jurisdiction, but there are certainly, significant number of lots where it would be. And I'm just wondering if we could have something in there about no addition of impervious surfaces.
As they say, sometimes I'll take it under advisement.
Yeah.
It sounds reasonable, but I'll have to look at the exact context and, of
okay.
course, check with my client, but it doesn't sound as though that's objectionable.
And the other, under other terms.
If I may, just.
Yes.
It may speak to one of the questions in terms of what we proposed with the ZBA, and you've seen it on the plans. As Brandon mentioned, the houses have options of some additional, what do we call them, 3-season rooms?
Right,
or
understood.
a garage.
I meant beyond that.
Right, exactly, as long as it's clear that it's beyond
concrete
that.
pads
Right,
and,
right,
that kind of stuff.
Yep.
And then the other thing that caught my eye, maybe I'm not reading this correctly, but D, other terms, 24, the grantor may delegate or assign any or all of its rights. And then until such assignment, the grantor reserves the right to modify, amend, release, and waive said covenants, restrictions, and conditions at any time. That sounds a little extreme and alarming to me that you guys could just walk away from these covenants. Am I reading that wrong?
Well, I would say technically you're not reading it wrong. There are a couple of things, and perhaps, mea culpa. I worked on it with Mr. Lilly, but mea culpa. Typically, what we would add there is that provided, however, that no such changes shall contradict in any way the requirements and obligations under the order of conditions and the 40B comprehensive permit, and things like that, which would speak to your concern.
Okay, but we got into this topic last time, I think, mainly because of our concern about the operation and maintenance of all the stormwater
Right.
stuff. So, so that needs to be all spelled out in the order of conditions with respect to the homeowners agreement, it sounds like to me.
Yeah, again, I don't have any issue with that. That makes sense. And that particular clause you cited, again, taken literally, it probably could mean what you said, but the intent is certainly not that the developer could in any way change things under the O&M plan, the order of conditions, the 40B permits. And so, it's...
Right, well, I recall a development in East Falmouth that about 15 years ago, the grantor did walk away from stuff and change its own responsibilities under a clause like that, so.
Yeah, no, it's a good point, and I'm sure we can, work with you, satisfy how that's spelled out.
Okay. One other question, this is just informational. Easements and other rights. Item 22, it's talking about if the association fails or is unable to take action, the town can come in and have the work performed and all that. And the expenses thereof shall be chargeable against the association and the lot owners, the trust property and the lots. And what's the trust property and the lots in terms of having things charged against it? I don't see the trust property
That's kind of not like
defined anywhere.
That's kind of like not the Rhode Island quote in terms of word copying and pasting, but A lot of these are set up as declarations of trust. This one might be. So if it refers to trust property, it might tie into an earlier definition where the common area is considered trust property, the equivalent of homeowner association property. But
Like
it also
open
may,
space or something.
But again, it depends on the form of entity that the homeowners association ultimately is. You know, it can be a corporation or it could be a trust.
Okay, and what would be this distinction between the lot owners and the lots? What's the difference between those things? For this, purposes of this, you know, assessing expenses
The short
these-
answer is without reading in front of me the entire context, but they're interchangeable. By referring to the lot, it just makes clear, which is also a provision that's probably at the beginning and the end, that all of the provisions and obligations run with the land, as we say. So it runs
Yeah.
with the lot, and then the owners are the ones who naturally would be involved in carrying them out, or against whom.
Paying the bills.
Right, paying the bills, and against whom any violations would be enforced.
Okay. Thank you.
I
Maureen?
just had a quick question. I forgot to ask, on page 6, it's actually on all of them, but it's the clearest on page 6. What is the dark, because it's not in any of your legends, and if it is, I stand corrected. See on this right here where the hash plan, the hash mark by the, it looks like it goes by the garage, and it's at the end of the road. What is that? What are all those? They're on every lot, except for like 3.
That right there?
No, the darker gray ones. That. What is that?
The garages.
So what, is that a garage at the end of the road, closer to lots?
This
Now,
one?
what's that, the next one over?
This one?
Yep.
That would be a garage for lot 12. So they're one-car garages.
So that one's detached.
Yeah, this one would be detached.
Okay.
All right, because that's not in your legend. And if you find it, again, I apologize, but I couldn't find it.
I was actually.
I thought it was asphalt sidewalk for a little bit, because
Yeah,
that's
so
the
did I.
dark with the hash, and,
Yeah, we
but,
have a lot of, we're in at a kind of hash.
you have a lot of
office.
hashes.
Trying to make everything different, you know?
Well, the only thing, we only have so much jurisdiction, unfortunately, and that's what happens with these projects, and where our hands are tied with 40Bs environmentally, except what little we can do. And it's rather disappointing that there's a little, the developments are so dense without any concern. I mean, they know they can sidestep it because of the 4 units, or whatever is gonna be here, the 25%. When I was reading the covenants, that was, and again, it's not in our jurisdiction, but just for public record, they're gonna be 4 affordable units here.
7.
7? All right, 7. All right, so 7, the burden, they're already in an affordable situation, and now they have this, this operating and management thing, and I'm sure zoning will approach that, but literally, that's what my concern is that if people can't afford to do that, then it ends up not getting done. Because you can put enforcement, and, all you do is you throw it in the rubbish, and that's the end of that for a while, and then somebody's gonna have to pick up the ball. We can't even get people, contractors, to have the order of conditions on site. So when we see these with, this many findings and conditions, they're only as good as who the people are that are gonna do it and adhere to it. So that's why we get a little twitchy about, when you say, oh, no, we'll take care of that. Well, we've been through this rodeo so many times, it doesn't get taken care of. The turtle gets hucked over the fence. And this is how it goes. By Courtney. So I think this board, I know myself, I'm very frustrated because we really think we could do a much better project for the environment if we had our regulations to help. So we do appreciate when you make improvements that come a little closer to what we would expect to see on a lot this impacted. Because it is nice that the town abuts this, because if there was another development, your property wouldn't be worth so much if they put another one next to you. So be thankful that you are next to the town, because your project would not be so aspiring.
One quick question,
Yes,
Madam
Jen.
Chairman. It goes
Sure.
to your point, and because Jamie's not on the forum, he can't ask the question. So Mary asked a question about additional impervious surface that's not shown on the plans. Are these guys gonna have AC units? Yeah,
Yeah.
they are. Where
They're
are the
gonna
little
be on
AC
concrete
pads?
slabs.
They're not
That's for
shown
you,
on the
Jamie.
plans, but I think we did call it out in stormwater. Typically on residential construction especially, we oversize our impervious numbers in our modeling by 10% to cover steps, bulkheads, AC pads, things like that that aren't necessarily shown on the plan, so we could, I don't know how we we're not gonna show like that detail, we could. We could add a note that says, I think that equates to almost, 150 to 200 square feet extra per lot that we model into ours. We could add a note saying that,
Please do.
for accessory accessory.
We normally
like that.
include everything like that on our, it required on our plans. I know it's cluttered, but
I can add, notes kind of explaining that it includes
Please.
steps, AC units, things like up to a certain square footage or
Okay.
something like that.
Thank you.
thank you. Courtney?
Yeah, Maury goes to exactly the same concern I have. And that is, because of the density, the issues with long-term maintenance, drainage patterns and so forth is exacerbated. It's amplified, just by its very concentration. And so I worry that no matter how well you design this, I worry that whether they're in the affordable units or the market value units, and they've got dry wells that are overflowing, where does that end up? Does that end up with conservation having to come out and wrap them on the wrist? Shouldn't there be something built into your homeowners association and somewhat that addresses this, simply because of the very density of it? I'm not a lawyer,
Not sure what it is.
so I'm not sure how you do it.
Sure, and I understand the concern, and, I would say simply, regardless of density, it's true of any development, a subdivision or whatever it is.
Right.
But I hear your point. And again, I didn't look at the draft that we submitted tonight. Maybe I should have, to refresh my memory. But if we don't have something about, similar to what we do say about the town coming in, and the whole HOA doesn't meet its responsibilities, certainly implicit, but we can make it explicit if it isn't, that the HOA can come in and do the work that an individual homeowner was supposed to do, such as perhaps the dry wells for the roof drains, and charge back the owner. That's totally appropriate to put in the covenants and in the HOA documents. So, we'll make note of that, and we can put that in.
Yeah.
All right,
Another
is it-
thing that we typically, or frequently anyway, do when there's a substantial development like this, whether it's for, one lot or multiple lots, is put in the order of conditions that, these things that require annual maintenance or some kind of routine maintenance and record keeping, that we get a copy of the records each year.
Sure, I was just working that, a condition like that in another town. I honestly forget if it was with the Concom or the ZBA, but it doesn't matter because it's appropriate for either.
Right.
Sure.
Mary?
Yes.
Could you, I don't know I should ask this question, but sometimes these plans get shrunk down, so when we use a scale, I just want to make sure it's correct. On page 8 of the smaller plan, it says it's 1 to 20, and I know you stated to me that the trees, where that whole underground A system's going to be, and you showed all the green that you were planting on top of it. What was the amount of distance you gave us? I thought you said it was like 12 or 20 feet.
I believe it's 10 feet at the most Worcester Court side, but it's close to 20 at the, towards the lot one. So I believe it's-
I'm talking the north side.
You're saying this setback here between the property line and that?
Yes.
That's 10 feet, and that's close to, I think, 16 or 18 feet.
Okay, so this plan actually Because it must have been shrunk down, the smaller one.
Yeah, those are a little less than half size. Those
Okay.
are 11 by 17.
Okay, because I'm only getting 4 feet here.
Yeah,
So, okay, so it's
they're
8.
intended to be plotted at 24 by 36.
Okay, so
we're
you
more
have
than
10
double.
feet.
Yes.
And that's where the vegetation will be
That's where we're
planted?
proposing that row of, some type of,
That really wasn't on that pretty plan.
yeah,
Yeah.
arborvitae, spruce, something like that.
All right, so, and they'll be salt tolerant and, all right.
Native, we can, if you have suggestions for species, we can.
Yeah, we could put that in the LOC also.
Yeah, yeah, well, and LEC, I mean, that, you guys do that, so.
Right.
All right, it's just, again, when they're gonna plow the snow there, you have a tree, and you get a lot of snow, sometimes, then it's gonna go push against those shrubs, and fill everything up. So just plan it well. I mean,
Yeah, and the intention, a residential street, the intention wouldn't be to plow snow there unless there was an extraordinary event. I talked with the engineer, I don't know if we put it in the HOA covenants yet, but we talked about, restricting vegetation within so many feet of the back of the roadway to allow snow to be plowed, so it's not, people aren't putting bushes right out along.
well, usually they'll just run it right out and push it across the street into somebody else's property. That's the norm. But that's why, I mean, again, it's, everything on a piece of paper looks wonderful. But reality, April Fool's Day, 1997, we got 2 feet of wet snow. And, where would you put, with all this macadam and all these driveways that are gonna have, cars parked and everything else, where are you gonna put 2 feet of snow over that much area in that little teeny spot? That's, so, and your neighbors are gonna be watching.
As far as I can tell, that's not in the covenants.
Okay, well, we can add that.
People forget we live here, because developers come from other places that are warm.
I don't come from that far away.
But we know better.
Yes, well.
I got 4
And
inches
we-
of snow the other day.
Yeah, and we also get frozen ground, which was one of my concerns in the first one. You have 0 perk rate in frozen ground. So, again, as it melts, if the ground's frozen underneath, it's runoff.
Yep, and we did pitch any area, the front yards and those 2 areas where we are pitched towards the road, so they would
Driveway.
flow
Yeah,
into
road.
the driveways, they would flow into the
Yeah.
road instead of off the site.
Okay, thank you.
Does the board have anything else?
Oh, did you get approval from the town for the sewer hookup yet?
The sewer hookup, I don't think we've got official, but they.
Part of the 40B.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't honestly see any remaining issues, but I don't want to be presumptuous, we still have to be back at the ZBA.
And we have
Okay.
letters from this Amy Lowell, superintendent, saying, this capacity and the connection would be allowed.
I think we asked that in the last one.
So, do we have some loose ends, or?
Yeah, I want to hear from Natural Heritage, and they need to make some corrections to
O&M.
the O&M and
And in your storm, this book, the SWIP, all the ones that were not relevant, and the chemicals and the,
we do kind of need that information.
if it's in
Okay,
here,
so-
they will use it, FYI.
So-
You guys will be gone and then somebody will use it.
It sounds like we need another continuance.
Where's my thing?
That's, it's up to you. And we will, we're near there, almost time.
Because of the things that you mentioned, although I don't view them as voluminous by any means, but we appreciate the back and forth. So when would the next hearing be? And also, was it possible in the interim to work with your staff, with Jennifer, on the draft order of conditions?
I'm not sure that I heard all of the last.
The first
part.
point was, when would your next hearing be?
Right, she'll tell us that in a minute.
May 2nd.
May 2nd.
Is there any way to do it sooner? Again, it might be beneficial to keep it open and to continue for the things that you said, so we can submit those, but obviously we're anxious to both finish up and then get back to the ZBA.
Well, we have no hearings next week because of town meeting and that kind of stuff. So, and then the next 2 weeks
Let's
after that
just-
are very loaded up.
Well, if it's possible, it would be appreciated.
Well, on the 18th, not including that, you have 5 new notices and 4 continued notices.
That's
And
that's a
on,
lot.
and on the 25th, which people haven't even submitted, some people have submitted new notices for, but there's still time. We have 2 new ones, but again, there's still time, and 3 continued, 2 of which you haven't even heard yet. Yeah.
Right, so
That's
they
why
might
I'm
as well be
saying,
new.
it's like, if I could do something, I would. I just can't.
We can't get past midnight.
Especially on the 25th. One of these hearings on the 25th is going to take at least 2 hours. Sorry.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, again, and I understand, that happens, we all have the scheduling things. Is it possible, and again, not being presumptuous, but is it possible to, understanding it would need your review and approval, but to work on a draft order of conditions so that maybe it could all be wrapped up at the...
We don't usually do that.
That's not a practice of this board, is
Right.
to collaborate on the draft order of conditions.
Right, if you don't collaborate...
You can certainly talk with the staff,
Yeah.
so, that
Actually,
we're-
I can't, once this
No.
hearing's closed, I can't
Oh,
take
that's
any other.
right.
No, I'm saying if
Well,
they...
no, if we
no, but-
continue.
No, I'm saying if
Yeah,
the
we
I'm
can
saying if the
talk-
hearing's continued, right.
Talk with the staff in the meantime.
Right.
Oh, yeah, that's
So
fine.
that we understand each other.
Right, right.
That's fine.
And again, I'm sorry, I'm not familiar with your customary practice.
No,
Is it-
if
no,
we.
No, but I mean, would it be possible, again, that even though it wouldn't be something we collaborate on per se, but that you would have an order of conditions that you would be ready to...
Not on the 2nd. The order of conditions would be ready on the 16th. So they usually will take all of the information, close their hearing, and then they have 21 days to issue that order of conditions. They will discuss it, we can incorporate, we can, if the board chooses, incorporate any comments or suggestions you have for the order of conditions, but it won't be voted on that night. Because I'm not gonna.
No, I hear you. Again, I'm just
And
trying
we
to...
don't even have natural heritage.
Information.
Right, but that's, I think there's an initial natural heritage.
No, we have that,
Oh.
no, we don't.
Oh, we don't have any, okay.
No.
I don't
I
have.
thought
We don't have
wanted-
anything, do we, Jen?
I
From
don't
natural
think I
heritage?
have the approval.
Well, he said you didn't. Right? You said we didn't.
We do have it, I haven't.
You
forwarded
have
to
it, we
Jeff.
don't, okay.
But again, it's just for the protection plan.
Yeah.
But this is a new letter now, right?
No.
Yeah, well, we
It's
want,
gonna
yeah,
be-
we want to verify that they understand the phasing.
Yeah.
No, again, I'm sure you understand why I was trying for a quicker date, but,
Yeah.
we're amenable to what you said. I think
Okay,
it makes
thank
sense.
you.
Sorry about that, sir. If I could do anything, I really
understand.
would. I really would. I'm really, I usually try, if it's, something that I do. And in this case, and I haven't done this for a while, we just are
Slammed.
really getting really busy.
Again.
And I apologize for that. So I could say, continue it to the 2nd, and if everything can get closed, and it seems that it should be able to be closed on the 2nd, you can anticipate the vote on an order of conditions on the 16th.
Okay, sure, understood.
Okay.
Yep,
Thank
thank you
you.
very much.
All right,
Thank you.
so, a motion, please?
Motion to continue to May 2nd, 2018.
Second?
Should we open up to the public?
Yes.
Oh, yeah, they will. Don't
yeah.
worry.
Oh,
All right, so, anything from the board at this time? All right, now, anything from the public? Please come up, sir. That was a lot of sitting.
I thank the board for working so hard so late. I know it's been a long night and a long process. Edward Jallowick, 54 Alma Road. My biggest concern, Mr. Walsh touched upon it, is the stability of the coastal banks. Looking at where some of these buildings themselves are sited in their close proximity to the bank itself, well within the buffer zone, and how close those banks are in turn to the cedar swamp and the vernal pool, their stability is a great concern to me and many other people in the community. The banks are fragile. They are not really stable. I walk that area on a regular basis as the land steward for the 300 committee. I was there again today, and just within the past week since I last was in the area, more trees have come down with these winds we've had, and the soil is very soft and wet. Roughly a 30-foot spruce had come down just to the north of lot number 12 on the coastal bank, so it's a couple of feet down the slope, and it's pulled. Of course, its root ball is out, the tree is totally down, chunks of the bank are with it, and this will continue to happen because nature seems to be awfully active. We're in a busy season, a busy era of storms. A lot of rain, a lot of high winds, tremendous number of big trees have come down within the cedar swamp. The stability of the bank, as you remove trees and as you excavate and run heavy equipment in their proximity, will further destabilize them. Trees are a social entity. They like to have their friends around them. If you remove all of the surrounding trees and leave one or two big ones, they likely shall fail. If you disturb the soil that they've been in for, 50 to 100 years, their root system will be compromised, and in all likelihood they will fail. And what holds these banks together is the vegetation. So and looking at the size of the trees, there are literally dozens of 12-inch and greater caliper trees that will be taken down because buildings are going right where the tree is, and they will then not be there to support their neighboring trees that are on the town side of the boundary line. And in the high winds, more trees shall fall. And as they fall, the bank shall be further destabilized. The vibrations and the excavation, you dig an 8-foot hole to put a foundation in and a slab to build a house within that 100-foot zone. And some of these are, maybe 20, 30 feet from the actual top of the bank. Over time, I suspect those banks will fall. Some of those houses will probably have foundation cracks, floor cracks. They may end up halfway down the bank over the next 30, 40 years. The lawsuits will be fun. The LLC at that point will be the long-lost corporation. They're gone. These homeowners will be stuck. The swamp will be compromised. The vernal pools will be destroyed. I urge the board to do everything within its power to not allow development in such close proximity and the removal of all these mature trees that will destabilize those banks that are vital for the long-term flood control and protection of that area. When the storm hits, that's the big one, that area below the bank will be underwater. And that water is going to erode those banks, and if they're destabilized, houses could go. That's my main point. The other thing I would request the board get from the developer is a further breakdown, itemized, of this impervious surface. The number still bothers me. I'm hearing 43%, but I think I also heard something along the line of 3 acres of impervious surface. 3 out of 5 is 60%, so I'm not sure what makes up that 43%. The road itself is about 3/4 of an acre with its sidewalk. That's a big chunk of land, just the street and its sidewalk. Then you have the driveways, the individual houses, the porches, the sheds, the garages, the steps, the air conditioner pads that you mentioned. And I know they've built some contingencies in that, but a detailed breakdown of where does 43 come from, I'm puzzled. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I think the ZBA will be paying attention to that.
Quickly, too, we also did provide a lot-by-lot breakdown
Yes.
of all the impervious areas.
Mhm. Yes, sir. Oh, I'm sorry. I was pointing to the man in back.
That's okay, I'll let you go first.
I'm Mark Stowe. I live at 115 Lucerne Avenue. It's at the intersection of Alma and Lucerne. And again, as Ed mentioned, thank you for taking the time. I know this is voluntary and it's a big commitment. And I think that for most of us, we don't disagree with the Chapter 40B, the concept of it, but it is an issue of the density. And a question I guess I have, maybe it's my ignorance, but the Conservation Commission, you enforce the environmental protection law, correct? For the state?
In this case, we're,
The Massachusetts Wetlands Protection Act.
right, we have
Right.
our own bylaw, but, you know, under the comprehensive permit situation.
Does it override the state regulations, the CMR regulations for the buffer zones completely? So the state law does not apply?
No, it's the opposite.
Okay.
Falmouth law.
So
Falmouth,
I think
regulations.
what we've heard is that these buffer zones go into the middle of the development in some areas, correct? Is that something that we have no control over enforcing? That's part of my question. Again, we get back to the density, and I think Chapter 40Bs are also supposed to include open space, and I'm not seeing any open space in this project, right? Okay, so I think it all gets to the fact of what Ed talked about earlier with the trees and the roots. And we all know about Haiti, where they took down the entire jungle, and then you have all the erosion, and it's just, you know, scientifically proven that that's a huge risk, along with the flooding. So we've had 4 nor'easters in the past 2 months. They haven't occurred in the spring and the summer. So they've occurred when the ground's frozen, there's layers of snow, and again, to your point that you already made, the water has to go somewhere, right? So I'm just wondering if the water is actually going to go into these drains when the soil's frozen, and if it's going to leach, you know, or if it's going to leach into the coastal bank. So again, I think we're getting back at the fact that it's a natural environment. Chapter 40Bs can be located anywhere. And in this case, we've chosen to locate one in the middle of a natural, mature forest versus like a field or, you know, some other flat surface that's not covered by trees and roots and then surrounded by very, very steep drop-offs into the vernal pools. So I think, you know, it's getting at all the issues we talked about before, but I just want to remind people that, again, these nor'easters don't occur. I don't recall one, you know, necessarily occurring in the perfect weather conditions. The other thing is, I don't know if you've been down Worcester Court further towards the beach, where they put in sidewalks. How many trees are down? I mean, we haven't even had a hurricane.
14.
I mean,
18? Okay.
trees
Yeah,
are
they're all
down.
heading towards
And
the
you know
water.
why they're
That was
down?
impressive.
They put sidewalks in. They did the sewer project, and they disrupted the soil, right? And all the trees have come down. I tried to get off Cape during the last nor'easter, the big one. I couldn't get down, Brick Hill Road was blocked. We couldn't get past the Methodist Church. We couldn't get to I was trying to get to 28. I had to go up to 151 to get onto the highway because of all the trees that were down. And that was in areas where the soil hasn't been disrupted because of sewer projects. If you go down Lucerne Avenue, there were 3 large trees down where they dug the ditch for the sewer next to trees. So I'm thinking about the abutters also, who in the green map, they're showing trees on the abutter side, but you're gonna have a clear cut right up to the border. And where are those trees gonna fall? You know, they have there's no buffer anymore for the wind to break, you know, the wind or all the trees in the surrounding area. So again, if they're falling on the homes of the abutters or onto the homes of the development, it's just something I think we're gonna have to realize is gonna happen, and we've got the evidence from the past 2 months. So I think in the order of conditions or in the homeowners association, is there gonna be an insurance policy, a liability policy associated with it, or a bond? You know, so that if we have destruction or flooding or, you know, what's the protection for legal recourse? Is that a provision in the HOA? That they have
For,
like
no.
$1 million
The,
insurance
HOA
policy?
The covenants are kind of a self-contained thing among,
So what's the recourse?
residents.
What's the recourse for the abutters? You know, when all the trees come down? I mean, according to the insurance companies, you're responsible for a tree that falls onto your property. If it falls onto your house because they've clear cut the trees next to your property line, it's your fault. It's your problem. It's not the other person's problem. It's yours. You know, so I mean, these are just all the issues we have to think about as abutters, and I think that for our town, you know, it has to consider the Chapter 40B and the laws of them, but also the community that already exists, and the fact that this development is supposed to fit into the community in terms of how it's supposed to be undistinguishable from the neighborhood, correct? I mean, it's undistinguishable in and of itself.
Compatible.
Yeah, right, in terms of being compatible. You're not supposed to be able to tell from one home to the next where these things begin and end. I mean, that's the theory behind it, to keep it consistent so it doesn't stand out as something different, you know, and not in conformance with the surrounding area. So, I mean, it doesn't really, to me, fit in with our neighborhood in terms of density again. So those are just a few of my concerns.
Yeah, there's an inherent contradiction because they're allowed to circumvent or bypass some of those density requirements.
If they can't override the state laws regarding the Wetlands Protection Act and there are buffer zones, so we're saying that we don't care about that the state law doesn't matter in terms of buffer zones.
We're not saying that, sir, but the state law is very, you know, very specific of what is allowed within a buffer zone, what's allowed without a permit, what's allowed with a permit, and trust me, this board will be looking at that.
Okay, that's good. That's the thing I was thinking, because when we see the map.
Unfortunately, the state law is definitely not as protective, thank you, Mary, as our local bylaw. So,
I understand. It's not, and the Cape Cod Commission, of course, is even more protective with 350-foot buffer zones.
They don't have jurisdiction.
Right. But the state has 100-foot buffer zones.
There are 100-foot buffer zones, but that's a buffer zone. It's a jurisdictional boundary. It's not a no-touch boundary.
Right.
So that's a lot of times a confusion with residents and with property owners, is that it's a jurisdictional boundary. This board has jurisdiction within 100 feet of that coastal bank. That's that buffer zone around the coastal bank, but it does not mean that nothing can be built there under the state act.
Okay, yeah, that's what I wasn't sure about.
Falmouth has no touch zones, but the state does not.
Okay, well, thanks for the clarification. Those are
Not
the
a
key
problem.
issues. In terms of the turtles, I think like any other turtle, do they not return to their nest sites?
They do.
They do.
So what good does it do to throw them over a split rail fence?
And that's part of the issue.
You know, so the ones that we found, the three that live
site.
on our property.
You can't turn them around.
Yeah, the three that we identify that live on our property, which is a quarter of an acre next to our home, they nest there, or they, at least a couple of them have nest sites, but they return to the nest site, so. Again, and I'm not, and you know, what can you do? I understand, but the point is that when we talk about moving the turtles and that contractors are going to respect them, I'm just thinking, really? I mean, if you.
That's kind of standard protocol. We've had this kind of program or requirement in orders of conditions for other projects.
Right, and I understand. But if the development, they said, was going to begin in the fall, they're hibernating. So they're hard to find when they're underground.
Yeah.
I can tell you.
I know.
So.
You've already run them over.
You know, if this April, we're already in April and May in the active season, if they start the project in the fall, you know, I don't know when they do the turtle survey, but it doesn't sound like all the barriers will be up until they start the project in the fall. So that seems to be an issue. All right, well, thank you. I appreciate your time again.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Would you like to come up?
Thank you. I appreciate everybody's thorough homework they did. It was very obvious by a lot of the questions you asked. By the way, my name is Mike Hatch, 64 Alma Road.
Thank you.
I did have a few questions, but I need to get better educated on the Wetlands Protection Act, and I'll do that before the next public hearing, and at that time I'll probably ask those questions. But I would like to thank Mr. Walsh for bringing up his sand pail example. Another one you may want to think of quickly is when you walk in the sand, put your foot down, you take your foot up, there's an imprint there, and the sand on the front, back, and on both sides has moved. So to think that that coastal bank isn't going to be disturbed by construction in the area, I think is, it's just not reality. And, you know, we can all cite examples, and, you know, there may be statistics, there may be other things, but if you go out and walk that, which I have, been lucky enough to get a tour from Ed, and you you can tell. You can tell by your feet, and I'm just very concerned that any activity out there is going to affect that bank, and it'll cause a domino effect to the vernal pool, the cedar swamp. They're all sort of interconnected. It's a very challenging piece of property to try and develop with those 4 natural resources right on the outside of the borders. So I would just request that the board take everything into consideration, and please consider protecting it as much as you can. Thank you.
Certainly will, thank you. Yes, sir.
Hi, my name is Fred Nucci, and I live at 102 Almond. And what Mr. Bird said earlier about an unknown density. I mean, Falmouth later on might regret ever allowing just for 7 affordable houses. Thank you.
Thank you. Anything else? Anything else from the board?
If it was earlier, I'd tell one of my stories that I used to describe to my students, but I won't at this point.
Thank you, Courtney. Thank you. All right, so we have a motion and a second for a continuance until May 2nd. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous, so moved. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
To scale, it's about 45-degree slope across the water, 25 feet high.
Glad we only have one
The
order.
house is built right on the edge of the garage.
So if they build in 20% leeway,
They got to be a little late.
what are the calculations?
Where you have to pick them
Like it had on the wall.
well, that's not too bad.
That's it.
You want
You know, I
to
don't
call
think anybody pays attention.
them, shuffling around?
It's gonna be,
There was a few trees and there was some low-lying vegetation.
It's too
You
dense.
could walk up and down.
But you know what?
Good night. Thanks a lot.
West Wing, 2 acres, 14 condos.
I want his job. Have to say a thing.
Susan is waiting patiently for us to finish our agenda.
Shut up.
For us, what?
Finish our agenda.
Yes, I just, gentlemen, I'm sorry, you're welcome to stay, but we have another agenda item we have to get to. Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen.
All right, so,
And now I've lost it.
so the next item, vote order of conditions on 42 Fiddler's Cove Road. And we need the quorum for this, I guess. I think everybody, well,
Here, it's in there.
speculate.
Oh, okay. Susan's awesome, she already has it.
Jamie, Mary, Lori, Courtney, and Kevin.
What was that, who was that?
Mark, Peter, Jamie, Mary, Lori, Courtney, and Kevin.
Oh,
Okay, now, did you say Kevin at the end there? Okay.
Jamie already left. You.
So everybody who's,
Yeah.
Oh, Jamie
how
left.
about Mark?
No, his code's still here.
I think she said your name. You said Mark, right?
Yeah, Mark,
Everybody,
Peter.
everybody that's here.
Jamie, Mary, Lori, Courtney, and Kevin.
The only one that isn't here that was on it was Betsy.
Yeah.
The only thing I had in my notes was a PLS stamp, and he was gonna get a plan for that.
I think should we, there he is, okay. Question answered itself.
Oh, the PLS? Okay.
Yes, I do recall
He said he
that.
was gonna do it.
Yeah, I don't know if he has.
It's not huge.
Losing
but it's
materials.
just
No,
consistent.
well, I'll double check. If not, I'll make it a special condition, but I'll double check. I'm sure he did. He was very, he wanted to really make sure all his i's were dotted and his t's were crossed, so,
That's all I had.
yeah. 42 Fiddlers. Anybody else?
I'm still looking for, I know I brought it with me. I put it on the
It's
table.
it's the tank one.
It's the one, it's CMG.
The guy's putting
It's at Fiddler's Cove, they're putting in.
Oh, yes, you're right. They're
removing all
burying,
the
they're
tanks.
bringing it above ground.
Yep, oh, I know, and we also want to make sure they protected those trees. There was a twin something, they didn't tell you which tree, but the ones that are close to where they're changing the grade.
Yeah, and didn't he say that they may not grade that much, so?
Exactly.
Okay,
Yep.
there we go.
And this is a big improvement to get those out of the ground.
Jamie, from a contractor standpoint, it's fine.
I don't see anything.
Okay, good. I'm just asking.
Yeah, this seems pretty uncomplicated.
It really is. Protect the trees and
Okay.
That's all I had was PL stamps and trees.
Cool.
All right.
Easy.
there has to be a provision for contaminated soil, right? I mean,
That was in the narrative.
Yep.
so,
Oh, the DEP.
yeah, I mean, so,
Well, yeah, as soon as they start digging, if they notice that, they're gonna have to pull an appeal. What's it, LSP, so. Yep, okay.
So with that said, move to accept as discussed.
Second.
All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous, so moved.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
There you go.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous, so moved. Thank you, we are adjourned.